Hey, night travelers, welcome aboard Route 52, the last gentle loop through Gravity Falls. Find a seat by the window, loosen your shoulders, and let the depot light fade behind us. Tonight, it's mossy mills, mirror lakes, and wind chime hills. All the cozy places that make sleep easy. Before we roll, where are you listening from? Drop your city or country, and if you like, what your night sounds like right now. Rain on a roof, a humming fridge, crickets? I love seeing our little midnight map fill in. Okay. Tickets punched, lights low. Breathe in, breathe out. First stop is coming up. Mind the gentle step. The night is gentle as a held breath. Pines crowd close to the wooden eaves, their dark, friendly silhouettes leaning over the little depot like neighbors sharing a blanket. The old timetable glows with a soft, moth-dotted bulb. Its letters are chipped, the corners curled, the paper tired in the kind way blankets get tired, softened by years of careful hands. Someone once painted the trim a cheerful green, and the paint remembers. It remembers summer and window boxes and hands wiping flour dust on aprons between departures. It remembers a time the depot's bench was new. Tonight it creaks a little. Not from weight, but from memory, and the creak is pleasing, like an attic step you've stepped 100 times, always finding it under your foot in the dark. The bus idles with a low, round purr. Not loud, never loud. It hums like a cat on a chimney. The headlights make pale cones through the thin fog at tree level, limning each raindrop that hasn't fallen yet. On the glass, a few moths tap and rest, tap and rest. Tiny lantern keepers not ready to surrender their posts. The driver's window shows a silhouette, shoulders easy, cap brim low. A steady presence who has been here before and will be here again, relaxed in the way of people who hold the night and trust. No hurry, no fuss. Every route is a lullaby if you steer softly enough. There is a click, a small, neat sound. The ticket punch. You don't see the hand that makes it, but you hear the click the way you hear a key turn in the welcome lock. It's the sound of starting gently. The sound of the night giving permission to let go. A paper ticket slips back into its leather folder. The driver lays it against the dash as if tucking in a child. The bus number on the nose reads 52 in warm, weathered digits, and the paint around it is scratched just enough to suggest long stories with no sharp edges, only the roundness of retelling and the sweetness of being known. Inside the depot, a clock with a friendly face ticks like a calm heart. Somewhere in the back, a tea kettle lives on a hot plate, and you can imagine the room it remembers. The cup you once had here, steam on your lip, cinnamon shadow at the bottom, the way the mug warmed your palm so you didn't have to choose between pockets and holding on. Night at the Pine Needle Depot is never empty. Even when nobody says a word, it's full of agreeable company, the kind that lets you lean on silence and hear it hold. There is a bulletin board. There are little paper tabs you can tear from the bottom of a flyer if you need a piano teacher or a quilt frame or someone who will mend the hem of a memory without asking why it frayed. Most of the tabs are gone. Most of them always are. The board has a strange habit of being useful in ways nobody records. A glove pinned by a safety pin waits for a hand at Love First in February. A sketch of the river landing, done in soft pencil, is signed only with a heart. A recipe for night cocoa, milk, honey, a pinch of salt, and a square of chocolate broken like a promise you're happy to break, leans at a tender angle where someone tucked it behind another paper. You could take it if you wanted. You could leave it for the next traveler. The depot approves of both. A train never comes here now. The tracks are a memory softened into weeds, but the depot keeps its post because rides still begin and end and circle through, and there must be a porch light for that. The porch light of a town is not always a bulb, Sometimes it is a bench. Sometimes it is a person who decides to sit on that bench until another person sits down. Tonight it is a bus. Route 52. One loop around the sleeping map for anyone who needs to see their home from a different angle before closing their eyes. The doors sigh open. A breath of pine wind drifts down the aisle, cool resin-scented, edged with the faintest lace of rain. The seats are clean and worn and kindly. The floor carries a soft constellation of tiny scuffs that pull your gaze like stars do, letting your thoughts loosen and wander and make shapes. Overhead, the lighting is a warm hush instead of a bright declaration. The bell cord gleams, a polite golden line for later if you like. At the back, a window is cracked just enough to hear the trees tell their soft, convincing story about how small we can be and still be held. The driver, without turning to make a ceremony of it, sets a folded timetable on the dash where you can see. There are 20 stops. The ink is dark and sure. Each name is something you've passed by a dozen times and never let fully in. The way you can live beside a river and only recognize its voice when the house is quiet. The moss-covered sawmill. Greasy's after-hours window glow. The mural underpass of summer memories, and on and on. There is no rush to read them all. You can let the names wash over you and settle. You can float. People often think journeys ask things of them. Tickets, times, plans, proofs. But Route 52 asks only that you sit and be breathed by the night. It asks that your shoulders come down and your jaw unclench and your stomach remember there is bread at home and perhaps the good jam and a glass of water by the bed that will be not too cold and not too warm when you wake at 3 and decide that yes, this is still a beautiful life. The ticket punch clicks again. It is not an order. It is not a demand. It is a lullaby note. The driver nudges the lever, and the engine's hum deepens, not in volume, but in comfort, like a heavy quilt settling along your shins. Outside, the moths rest their wings and watch you go, little gatekeepers content to keep the gate. The depot's door swings once in the wind, then finds where it likes to rest and does so. First stop incoming, the driver says, as if to the bus, as much as to you. The voice is easy. The words land like pebbles in slow water, ripples widening. Please mind the gentle step. The doors close with a hush that has learned the softest way to meet itself. The pines nod. A twig falls. The timetable's bulb hums. The road opens its palm and the bus rolls into it, slow and sure, carrying with it a pocket of warmth where anyone can sit and let the night finish its sentence. And the sentence is kind. The river finds the mill long before you do. It has traced the same bend for years upon years, smoothing the stones the way a mother smooths hair from a brow. Tonight it's unhurried and pleased with itself, glossy as satin where the moon brushes it, faintly ruffled where a branch of alder leans down to whisper. The bus rounds the corner, and there the old sawmill settles beside the water like a big, gentle animal that has decided to nap forever. There is a wheel and there is moss. The moss is not a takeover. It is a sweater. It keeps the wheel company. Every soft green tuft has settled with intention and stayed, and the wheel has agreed to be kept. When the bus kneels at the curb, the river's hush enters the aisle. It's the quiet of a story nearly told. You can feel the boards of the mill in that hush, the wide planks that were once bright and resin-scented and are now deep brown and thoughtful. Someone's boots tapped along them every day in a rhythm that matched a heart and a clock and a lunch bell. The saw sang. The sawdust fell like a summer snow, and it smelled like new cradles. If you listen, the wood still tells the truth. The beams in the rafters carry rings within rings within rings. The rings are not secrets, they are safekeeping. Count them, and you count seasons. Lay a hand on them, and you can imagine how many hands rested here to catch breath after carrying this and that, built that and this. Wood remembers the way we do when we're asked gently and given time. The mill has been given time. It has taken it and made it soft. In the early days, when names were still attaching themselves to corners of the town like pigeons choosing favorite roofs, there was a carpenter who loved the silence that follows work. Not the quiet that starts it, the prayer of measurements and the hush of pencil on plan, but the deep, low, room-filling quiet when the last nail is tapped home and the tool sits down. He believed that all houses should be made to hold sleeping well. He believed that tables should serve elbows and laughter, and the kind of homework you don't want to do but can if there's bread and butter. He believed that cradles should never creak at night. They don't here. The cradles made from this mill's wood remember a promise. The promise is simple. You may rest, and the resting will hold. No hinge will argue. No slat will complain. No board will announce your movement to the dark. If you wake and turn and dream again, nothing will mind, and everything will help. Because from seed, through sapling, through tree, through plank, through plan, the wood learned to be part of sleep. The mill wheel took seasons to accept moss. At first it remained what it had always been, a circle that turned labor into useful shapes. But time has a way of teaching what else we can be. The wheel learned that stillness is also work. It learned that staying can be a kind of kindness, that to hold a place so that others can find it by memory alone is a task worthy of a wheel. The moss taught the wheel patience. The wheel taught the moss rhythm. Together they hold the river's songs at a steady volume, not to dim them, but to make them consistent, so that those who live nearby always know what night is doing without needing to look. On the stone steps, the smallest ferns have taken root, like greedy bookmarks in a thick novel. They are green in the way of fresh starts. A nail, forgotten in a beam, has worn a rust halo that looks like a sun setting in a prairie sky. A rope hangs from a beam, not because anyone will pull it, but because there should be a rope. Mills like ropes, the way kitchens like towels. Inside, if you could walk the old floor, the dust would bloom politely, then settle again, as if to say sorry for being seen. But we stay with the bus because the bus knows this is a place to look at through gentle glass, to breathe in without crossing the threshold. Some places you visit with your eyes so your footprints stay spare and the story can keep. The driver says nothing. The driver is a person who can let silence do its work. You can imagine them once, years ago, stepping out, putting a square of bread on the top step, and saying nothing then, too. Maybe a blue jay came. Maybe it didn't. The bread dried, then softened, then disappeared, and the step thanked it for the company. There is a legend people don't call a legend because calling it that would make it loud. It says that if you bring a worry to the mill and hold it as lightly as you can in both hands, the river will take the part of it that is water, and the wood will take the part of it that is ring, and the moss will take the part of it that is time. You will go home with the part of it that is yours to keep, smaller now, shaped better for your pocket. The legend has no rule about how often you may come, or whether your worry is big or small. The mill cares only for the manner of holding, lightly. It's good practice. The bus practices it also, carrying you lightly through the night, without jostle, without hurry. Someone left a thermos here once long ago. Guitar windowsill inside, metal scuffed, paint chipped, lid still snug.
If you could unscrew it, you might smell a ghost of coffee and the idea of cinnamon, but of course you won't. The thermos likes the sill. The sill likes the thermos. They keep each other from being lonely when the water is very low and thinks too much about stones. We let them. The river says, softer now. The bus doors ease open, just for the shape of the sound. You breathe in wood that used to be tree. You breathe out something you didn't need to carry any farther. It is not dramatic. It is not a performance. It is a small, perfect housekeeping for the heart. The doors ease closed. The wheel does not turn. It doesn't need to. Turning is not its job anymore. Its job is staying and being a circle in a square world, reminding the night that roundness is also a way to be.
The driver touches the timetable with 2 fingers, a friendly habit, like patting a pocket to feel the key. The engine deepens, and the mill grows smaller in the window, then becomes a suggestion behind cottonwoods, then becomes only sound, water, wood, moss, quiet. The kind of quiet that stays with you when you lean your head to the window and let the vibration of the glass tell your bones a simpler story than the one you tell yourself. Onward softly. Some lights are bright because they want to be seen. Other lights are warm because they want you to feel seen. Greasy's does the second kind. The bus glides along the curb, and the diner is already there the way a kitchen smells like toast before you put the bread in. Chairs are tipped up on tables, legs to the ceiling like a troupe of acrobats, frozen mid-trick. The checkerboard floor is a quiet invitation. The neon sign hums not in the way of neon that has something to prove, but in the way of a bedtime story told for the 100th time, softer each telling, because both teller and listener know where the best parts live. A pie cools in the window. It always does. Even on nights when nobody is baking, the idea of pie chooses the window and sits, and that's enough to make your breath come easier. Out back, the alley sighs a familiar alley sigh. A stack of crate lids leans. A mop bucket dries. A cat, undecided between independence and the thrill of a saucer, tries to look accidental under the light. On the counter inside, there is a napkin dispenser that has dispensed 1 napkin slightly, as if to say, I've got you. Near the register, a jar holds spare quarters. The sign beside it, scrawled in a hand that believes in simple words, says, for whoever needs one tonight. Below that, in smaller letters, tomorrow there will be more. It is never empty. Even the nights when it looks empty, someone has tucked a bill below the quarters so the next hand finds not just coin, but a small surprise disguised as hope. The windows fog from the inside, not because of heat, but because the room keeps stories very close. If you could step in, you'd smell the big things, coffee and fry oil and butter, and the small things, vanilla behind the coffee, pepper behind the butter, sugar behind the fry oil like a shy neighbor waving from a porch. A red stool turns once on its pole and then decides to stop, not dizzy, just content. Beside the pass-through, there's a bell and an elbow-worn spot where hands have leaned to say things that people say when they're well-fed and safe. You get home all right. See you next time. Tell them I said hey. There's a guest book. Of course there is. It's not a fancy one with a fountain pen on a chain. It's a wide-ruled notebook from the kind of store where pencils live in coffee cans. People don't sign their names. They write things like, best pancakes on a rainy day, or put extra napkins by the window seat. The steam makes me happy, or I told the truth here, and nobody charged me extra. Once in the middle of a page in careful block letters, someone wrote, I didn't know where else to go. Underneath, the cook, who was not supposed to write in the guest book because the cook had strong feelings about customer space, wrote, You did great. After closing, Greasy's likes to leave a slice of pie on the sill. The plate is chipped but clean, the fork facing the right. Whoever needs it can take it. Nobody takes the fork. The fork is left exactly where it should be, which is part of how the plate always finds its way back to the kitchen. On winter nights, the pie is pecan, and the syrup shines like a little frozen river that never freezes. On summer nights, it's berry and the crust flakes if you look at it with love. Nobody cuts the rope around the world with acts like these, but somehow the world lifts easier on the shoulder afterward. The bus door breathes open. Warmth walks in like a friend who never uses the front door because the back steps come right into the kitchen, and that's where coffee is. Night air and diner air shake hands politely in the aisle. You don't move. You don't have to. Greasy's is one of those places that can be visited from a seat with your forehead near cool glass. The visit counts anyway. You can feel your stomach decide things are fine. You can feel your chest lower the guard it sometimes raises without asking permission. Your mouth tastes a memory. The end bite of a grilled cheese, edge crisp, inside tender, grease on your thumb. Napkin cradling the last triangle like a small, solemn ceremony. If you lean your head a little and let your eyes soften, the chrome will sparkle in a way that says tomorrow will be clean too. That is the secret contract Greasy's keeps. Not spectacular, but steady. Not fancy, but exact. A plate that has learned the weight of breakfast. A cup that has learned how many refills belong to a long conversation. A sugar pour that knows the speed that makes the right little hill and no more. That comfort matters when it's dark, and the clouds have not decided whether to let go. People have rituals here. They sit in certain booths when their birthdays are on weekdays. They order pancakes for dinner when someone they love passes a test or passes a hard day. When the cashier returns change in coins and smiles, the words around the smile aren't careful because they don't need to be. This is a room where people save their careful for when it counts. The rest of the time, they mean what they mean, and the walls take it in and keep it safe. Tonight the blinds are half drawn to keep the light a secret that the night is allowed to keep. But a slit of glow draws lines on the sidewalk, brightening the damp where the rain tried once and then thought better of it. The bus windows collect that glow and lend it to the aisle. Your shoes look gentler in it. Your hands look like the hands of someone you trust. The driver lifts a thermos, perhaps the same kind you saw in the mill window, perhaps another, but cousin to it, and takes a sip without making it a statement. The smell walks by you, soft enough to be polite, rich enough to be real. If you were to step down, if you were to touch the brass of the door handle, it would be warmer than the air. If you were to press your palm against the glass of the pie case, it would be cool as the underside of a pillow you haven't flipped yet. If you were to look at the whiteboard by the kitchen pass, you would see tomorrow's soup written in dry erase, and you would know something about tomorrow that you didn't know 5 seconds ago. And that would make tomorrow less like a blank and more like a place already partly furnished. But you don't have to do any of that. The bus knows you know. The bus knows that being near enough to feel welcome is the same as walking in when the night is this kind. There is a comfort in choosing not to cross a threshold you could cross any time. It tells the heart it has choices. It reminds the body it isn't stuck. The doors draw themselves closed. The neon buzzes a yes, not a goodbye. The pie settles on its plate, a little sigh as crust meets dish, and somewhere, 2 blocks over, a light in an upstairs window turns off in the way of lights that turn off for good reasons. The driver taps the edge of the timetable, a habit that by now feels like it was always a part of the bus's own way of thinking. When the bus pulls away, the reflection of the diner stretches along the windows like a ribbon and lets go only at the corner. The hum of the engine matches the hum of the neon for 3 long breaths. Then the road carries you into a darker stretch where the tires sound like a page turning slowly and closing on a chapter you loved. Onward, with a little sugar on the tongue and a warmth you didn't have to ask for. Underpasses keep secrets in some towns. In Gravity Falls, ours keeps color. The bus slips under the roadway, and for a moment, the roof is close. The world is near, and the lights on the bus make a soft room within a room. Then the mural comes, and the world opens again because now it's on the walls. Color under daylight is one thing. Color at night is another. Street lamps catch blues and oranges and gentle old reds and give them back with a quiet halo that turns paint into something you can feel on your skin like the shade of a tree. The mural isn't official. No plaque claims it. No city logo sits in a corner declaring stewardship. And yet it is looked after, the way a garden is looked after when many hands happen to love the same patch of earth. Every solstice, just a little, not much, something changes. A kite that was only a triangle grows a tail. A shop door gains a bell. A face in the crowd receives a smile that wasn't there before. A curve of a line so small you would miss it if you were running. But no one runs here. Not under the mural. Even the late skaters lower their wheels to a whisper, so the underpass can hear itself think. Picture panels travel the length of the walls like slow river current. A summer fair unfolds over 20 feet. Paper tickets at a wrist. A string of bulbs that seem to light themselves simply because the paint knows how. A ring toss where every bottle is the right distance from every other bottle because, in this remembered fair, missing was never the point. There's a lemonade stand where the pitcher sweats in a way only paint can sweat, and the ice is blue and white and somehow makes your tongue feel cold without touching anything. Beside it, a pie-eating contest. Nobody seems to mind losing to the small kid with freckles and serious eyes. A Ferris wheel that isn't tall because it needs to be tall, but because from up there you can see the river make a shape you like. Between the fair scenes there are quiet corners. A porch swing with room for an extra elbow. A shop window full of jars that shine like they might contain first days. First days of school, first days of summer, first days after a hard thing. A dog asleep with a paw over its nose, painted so softly you want to whisper thank you to whoever held the brush that night. Above the dog, in tiny letters almost too small to see, someone has painted, "Be gentle with your loud." The bus door opens and the sound changes. Underpasses are like shells you can hold to your ear. They keep a version of the outside and give it back differently. Here your breath sounds like the ocean, the road, coming and going, steady forever. Drips from the ceiling, thin as strings, mark time you didn't know you were keeping. A couple of skateboard wheels murmur across the far side, the way bees murmur when a garden is just right. Their shadows pass over the painted grass, and the grass approves. The mural's oldest part lives near the middle. A family picnic from a year that is nobody's exact memory and everyone's general one. The blanket is bright. The basket is overflowing in the calm, confident way that says someone remembered napkins and someone else refilled the water and nobody is counting bites. The faces are not detailed. They don't need to be. Their posture says it all. Back slack, knees crooked, hands reaching without apology. Above them, a small flock of birds curves toward the underpass opening as if the mural knows where the sky is and intends to meet it. At the very edge of the blanket, a corner is lifted in the faint suggestion of a breeze. When the solstice comes, that corner lifts just a little more and then a little less, as though the year breathes right there, and the blanketed ground breathes with it. Not far from the picnic, nearer the bus, the mural gathers the town's small shops into one long street that could be Maine and could be the memory of Maine. The barber's pole spirals with patience. The bookstore window keeps the spines of summer favorites turned out, and if you look close, the titles aren't words. They are shapes that feel like the ideas of your first libraries. The ice cream cone on the parlor sign seems to glow from within, as if the moon moved in. Over a stoop, a string of paper cranes floats, each wing caught in the lift of a painted breeze. The cranes arrived one year in June. No one knows who brought them. The next solstice they had moved 3 inches to the left, as if the whole mural had simply let out a long, happy sigh. On the opposite wall, a lake stretches, a lake made of brushstrokes and faith. Little boats slip along in straight lines that feel like hand-holding rather than hurry. A boy in a red cap leans with patient intent, holding a fish that may or may not bite and may or may not exist. But the line sags in a way that suggests he has perfected the art of waiting. The bank is dotted with picnic tables that look like they might have splinters, but none of the splinters hurt. The sky is wide, the sun is low. The day in the painting will stay at 5:30 forever, because 5:30 is a good time for everyone to have one more cookie. Every here and there, along the bottom edge, where the concrete meets the worn path, there are handprints. Small hands, many colors. Some hands overlap, new over old, summer over summer, and the way the paint thins at the edges makes it look like the hands are waving when car headlights pass. Above them, someone wrote, "We were here," and someone else wrote, "R" in small letters between "we" and "were," so that no matter how you read it, both are true. They will leave things at the mural. Not much. A ribbon tied to a railing. A small flower tucked in a crack where 2 panels meet. The ribbon fades and then disappears. The flower dries and then becomes what dried things become. On solstice nights, the painters, who are not a group and yet are the way fog is a group, come with paper cups of chalk dust and jars with their names on masking tape. They hum more than they talk. They carry brushes wrapped in cloth. They take turns holding a flashlight for each other, like surgeons doing something delicate. Nobody leads, but somehow the work happens in a sequence that feels like a dance. A little light here, a little warmth there, a smile that grew, a wheel spoke repaired, a kite tail longer by 3 boughs. Sometimes, if the year has been heavy, they paint nothing at all and only wash the walls with clean water that gleams gray and leaves everything the same. Leaving it the same is also a kind of care. The bus windows frame a stretch of mural where summers passed and summers promised meet in the middle, like people on a narrow bridge who both decide to step sideways at the same time. You feel your shoulders make a decision to be lighter than they were 5 minutes ago. Not because the mural promised anything big, but because it offered something small and kept it. It promised that color can be kept even in places the sun forgets. It promised that hands can make things better without making a sound. It promised that memory doesn't have to be loud to make a home. There is a faint echo of a radio from a car parked further down. It plays a song that was a hit for 3 weeks one July, and then became something else. Less obvious, more ours. The underpass gives the song back to itself in a way that rounds off the edges and lengthens the notes. Someone laughs. Someone takes a picture. Someone laces their fingers with someone else's, and they keep walking because that's how you pass through an underpass, with the next street waiting and the one behind you giving you a push you can't feel, but you can hear in your breath. The driver checks the mirror, not to be sure, to be part of it. The bell cord glows for a second in the light. No one pulls it. There's nowhere urgent to be tonight. The bus knows. The mural knows. You know. The doors sigh. They close. The engine hums. The mural's last panel, the canoe by the reeds, the oars shimmering with the moon, slides by, and the bus climbs out from under into night that feels a little fuller now. Night that has been colored and held and quietly agreed with. Ahead there is another stop, and another, and another. The rhythm is as steady as a heartbeat at rest. We will keep it that way. The road thins, then tilts toward a hill where trunks rise like columns in a quiet cathedral. Needles stitch the night together overhead. The bus eases to a stop where the path becomes too narrow for anything but feet and patience. Through the windows you can see the lookout deck pinned to a cluster of old firs, planks silvered with weather, rails rubbed smooth by elbows that leaned without hurry. A laddered ramp climbs in a gentle switchback. The stars feel lower here, as if they've stepped down a rung to speak softly. The doors release a slow breath. Pine comes in cool and resinous, practiced at calming. The driver doesn't speak. There's a little habit now how they rest 2 fingers on the timetable, a touch that is more blessing than check. The engine idles like a hand on a shoulder. From the deck above, a bell, not a bell that rings, a bell that exists, lets the wind hum through it. It isn't meant to be heard. It's meant to be felt, an intention at the edge of sound. They say the lookout was first built by people who needed to count distant lanterns on logging nights. But it stayed because later people needed a place to count other things. Meteors, breaths, reasons to be kinder tomorrow. The railings have hosted paper cups of cocoa, thermoses with names in fading marker, and notebooks with constellations no other atlas records. Those are the star stories this town keeps for itself. Not the warrior and the hunter and the big spoon and the little one, but constellations you can find by memory when you're tired, and your eyes want the sky to meet you halfway. Trace them now through the glass, over the black branches and the soft lacquer of dark. The thermos, 5 patient points arcing like a lid turned just so, steam suggested by faint, salt-grained stars that only resolve when you stop trying so hard. The knitted scarf, a long lane of specks that cross the sky with the persistence of winter comfort. A pattern that changes once a year when someone in town learns a new stitch. The porch light, a triangle with a steady heart star, the one you tell children about when they ask what home looks like if you're lost on a walk. Far toward the river, the spare key. Near the orchard, the well-worn path. Above the depot, the safe bench. Names that do exactly what names should, make the big feel close. On certain nights, the town adds a new small name. Not a ceremony, no announcement. The lookout night people, who aren't a club and yet they are, arrive at different times with blankets over shoulders and words still in pockets. They lean on the rail and decide together, without deciding on purpose, that the star just above that leaning fir will be called the cup of water by the bed. And on the year when there was more leaving than staying, a dim string of lights near the horizon was called the last hug at the door, and the name fit so well that even strangers used it the next week without knowing where they had learned it. No one measures the sky with rulers here. The sky is measured in yeses. Tonight the yes is weathered wood, and a slow drift of air that reminds you your ribs open like windows and can close gently again without slamming. A moth streams past the bus lights and is gone, one pale brushstroke on a huge, dark canvas. Wind moves through needles with the sound of a thought finishing, or a thought deciding it doesn't need to finish to be true. There is a box bolted to the rail, a little library once, then a little listening box for late summer insects, when a teacher brought students up with jars and notebooks and questions. Now it's for papers with the names of those constellations. The papers are folded and refolded until the creases remember better than the ink. If you opened one, you would find a child's handwriting, stars labeled with careful joy alongside tidy block letters from a grandfather's hand, both pointing to the first try that worked and the first try that didn't but still mattered. The sky makes room for both the way a good porch makes room for boots and bare feet. Someone left a scarf on the rail last winter. It's still there because things left with kindness weather into belonging. The scarf became a sky measure for a while, the row of pearls marking where to look for the meteor path in December. When snow came, it wore snow so well that people decided snow should be considered another way the night wears stars. You listen now to the way the deck would creak if you put your weight on the right board. You hear it through the bus floor, the same tone a rocking chair gives when a story reaches the part where the tension falls off like an apple that was finally ready. In that imagining, you have climbed without climbing. You have looked without squinting. The lookout has done its work without asking you to do anything more than be near it and allow your shoulders to fall the distance of one quiet exhale. The driver reaches just once to tug the bell cord enough to make the smallest click. It isn't a signal to move. It's the kind of punctuation a soft paragraph uses when it knows it's said enough. Out beyond the deck, a plane crosses, a high, slow star with a purpose you don't need to share to respect. It threads between the porch light and the thermos, and for an instant, it is part of both and neither, a traveler blessed by names it will never hear. The doors draw themselves shut, and in the firming of the seal, you feel the town's steady palm. The bus leans forward the way a person leans into a hug they've accepted fully. Behind, the lookout remains, keeping watch without watching, letting whoever needs the height borrow a little extra sky. Ahead, the road softens around a curve, and someone, somewhere, is pointing through a cracked window and whispering, "There, that small one. That's the good news coming tomorrow." And you believe them. Onward, with the sky closer than it looked from your door, rail bends, remember, more than straightaways. Curves carry the leaned-in weight of engines, the decisions of conductors, the slow geometry of patience. The bus finds the bend where the track leaves the main and becomes a promise that was kept long enough to help and then retired with honor. It sits half hidden in sumac and grass, rails dark as river stones, tie-ends softened into soil. A crossing sign, almost decorative now, still knows its shape and keeps it faithfully against the moon. The doors open to the rural night. Off toward the low wetland, a frog makes a one-word case for existence and is thoroughly convincing. Somewhere far enough that it's only a rumor, a freight horn turns in its sleep. Here the air smells like iron that decided to be kind, an old creosote that drifted into a memory of tar and sun and men laughing from the belly. The ballast crunch, if you could step down, would be the crunch everyone knows from summers chasing nothing important, carrying a stick that became a scepter, tapping a rail to hear the small bell inside it. There was once a train locals called the Kind Train, not officially. Officially, it had a number and a route and a timetable punched into squares by people who believed in squares, but the town counted it differently. If the winter was long enough to make cheeks ache and joints argue, the Kind Train brought parcels from cousins who wrote letters in loops and florists who sent greenery that smelled like hope, and the hardware store that believed in letting people borrow space heaters the way neighbors borrow sugar. On birthdays, its conductor, a person with hands like rolled-up maps, tugged the whistle in a way that made the sound turn around twice and sit down right in the middle of town, then wiggle once like a puppy who knows it is wanted. The conductor waved at every porch. Not a big wave. A wave that said, "I recognize your silhouette at this hour and respect the coffee you take with it." He waved even on nights when no one was out, because absence can be waved to as well. Kids learned to put their hands up before the whistle arrived, so when the sound wrapped the bend, their fingers were already saying yes. On the night the conductor retired, he walked the curve and patted the posts with the same rhythm he used to keep time in his head. Then he left his gloves under a rock where people sometimes leave flat coins for the track to press into ovals. The gloves stayed until they didn't, and then a small thank you card appeared in their place, the way weather leaves notes with leaves. Tracks click at night, even when no train comes. It's the metal cooling and thinking. The bend gives those clicks room to breathe. They string themselves like a necklace across the arc, the kind of necklace you put on in the dark by feel, knowing each small bead without seeing it. The telegraph poles, most gone now, one standing, are tall witnesses. The last one holds a length of wire the wind still plays, a single taut line that hums at one perfect tone when the air moves out of the west. When the town was young, that hum meant news. Now it means continuity. Both are forms of comfort. The bus hum folds into the track hum, and for a few breaths you can't tell which sound is leading. That's fine. The chorus is better than the solo. The driver rests their palm on the wheel, an old-school gesture that keeps 200 memories from shaking. Your eyes follow the rails where they vanish into tall weeds. You feel the temptation to imagine where they go. You let the temptation pass. There is wisdom in not following every story to its end, especially at night, especially when the beginning is enough to make your shoulders lower and your hands quit their unnecessary work. On the far side of the bend, someone long ago bolted a small bench to a post. It's barely a bench. 2 boards, one held by 3 lag bolts, that learn to accept weather with dignity. There are names carved into it shallowly, the way people carve names in places that weren't meant for names, but understand anyway. Initials inside a square, not a heart, not here. Dates that refuse to be read at night. A single ring of circles that implies a train wheel without declaring it. If the bench had a motto, it would be, "Stay long enough to catch the second quiet." Every town has one place where leaving and staying shake hands. The rail bend is ours. People came here after arguments that turned out to be about other things. People came here to consider jobs that would take them away, and love that would change their address, but not their direction. Weddings have happened at this bend, and breakups that were kinder for being near something that knows how to continue with grace. On one spring afternoon, a father set a tiny shoe on a tie and let the boy it belonged to stand one sock-footed on the wood and learn that balance is mostly in the knees and the breath. "Bend like the track," he said. And then he didn't say it again, because once was enough alongside rails that proved it. There is a story people don't tell because it would spoil its own usefulness if spoken aloud. On some nights, the kind train runs without running. Folks who need it hear a whistle that nobody else hears, and the whistle means that what you need is already moving toward you, no schedule required. The need shrinks just enough to be placed somewhere safe. The track, by doing nothing but being what it is, participates. Rust participates too by making beauty of old effort. The doors lift their seals. The night steps back. The driver glances once at the single standing pole. It hums, or maybe that's memory you're hearing. The engine draws the bus forward as if tugged by a string tied to a promise made long ago that gentle things will be kept in inventory even after the warehouse closes. The bend disappears behind alder and shadow. A frog makes another case for existence, and once you've heard it twice, you can't imagine arguing. Onward, curve slightly in the direction of kindness. Some lakes take your face and give it back to you braver. Mirror Lake gives it back to you calmer, edges rounded by water that learned its manners from glass and geese. The bus slows where the road opens to a small parking apron. Between the headlights and the shore, a boardwalk runs like a quiet thought. Simple, level, content to carry footsteps without keeping count. The doors part with their soft routine. Damp air lifts, wearing a thin veil of lily and cedar. The lake is so still that the moon looks patient in it. The boards of the walk knew hands and hammers, but the cleats that hold them learned lullabies later from the waves that nudge and withdraw, in a rhythm older than any person who walks here now. Along the rail, lanterns stand dark and still glow anyway, just a feeling along the lids. The way you can sense a smile even with your eyes closed. People say it's because of the varnish reflecting the sky. People say it's because of the lake's polite habit of making the night a little better than it arrived. People don't agree. They don't need to. There is a wooden rack near the first bend of the boardwalk, filled with smooth stones broken free upstream, each fitting a palm like the answer to a question you forgot you asked. A small sign, carved with a very good pocket knife by someone who knows how to say just enough, reads, 3 skips, see you soon. Nobody polices the rule. The lake manages it gently. When children throw a stone and it skips once, then sinks, the water takes their disappointment and makes it into concentration for next time. When an old man sends a perfect 3-hopper along the face of the moon and mutters, there we are, the lake makes a note under the heading, expected and satisfying. When a teenager full of lightning arms a flat slate and it skips 7 times like a dare, the lake laughs the kind of laugh that doesn't make anyone else feel small. Lantern posts every 20 paces used to hold flames. Years back, the town changed them to bulbs that emulate flame enough to comfort and stop just short of pretending. On late springs, when frogs practice their chorus, the lanterns flicker microscopically as if keeping time. During summer fireworks on the far side of town, the lanterns decide they are the steady ones and hold a warm tone until the last distant pop says goodnight. In winter, they glow through fog and make the path look like a necklace someone doesn't want to take off yet. The boardwalk's planks have a language. The low creak that means joint. The higher sigh that means a screw wants attention. The little thup that means a shoe with a pebble in it passed this way, and the pebble put up with the ride. If you were out there now, your heel would tell you the exact millimeter rise where 2 boards meet on purpose to allow rain to have somewhere to go. That knowledge of practical kindness built into wood is a good thing to feel underfoot. It tells the body that thoughtfulness can be structural, not just sentimental. Halfway along, a bench faces the widest water. On its back, a brass strip names someone who loved it here and asked to go on loving it in a way the town could afford. The strip is warm even on cold nights because it stores summer like a battery. The inscription reads, for listening. People have left a few ribbon scraps tied to the bench ends, birthdays, anniversaries, prayers, but they weather off in a season, and that's right too. The lake doesn't collect much. It circulates. Even the fallen leaves spin once, twice, then find a cove where they become tea for the shore. Things said at Mirror Lake tend to arrive at the right volume. Proposals enter the air like birds that know distances. Apologies leave the mouth and become reachable. Parent and child conversations, done while watching ripples lose their edges, edit themselves without anyone feeling edited. Some nights the boardwalk holds one significant silence between two people who aren't ready to talk yet and turns that silence into a bridge instead of a wall. When they walk back to the car, their feet share the same rhythm. The lanterns notice and approve by doing nothing at all. If you stand at the furthest outward bow of the planks, you can see where the shallow meets a sudden dark, an honest drop-off that no one has ever pretended away. In daylight, the sign says deep water. At night, the water simply shows it with its shade, a well inside a mirror. People with troubles come here and watch the line between safety and depth. Many decide to throw worry across that line and see how it floats. Most float long enough to be smaller by the time they sink. The lake is very good at portion control. You hear footsteps, the remembered kind, not the present kind. Pairs and singles, quick and slow. A cane once, thump creak, with a breath afterward that sounded like permission. A dog toenail click that told the boards important news about ducks. Teenagers running not from anything but toward seeing their own breath in December. A woman pushing a stroller that had learned to roll politely. And on a certain August night every year, the feet of a small parade. The lantern walk that isn't a parade. People with jars and votives, paper sacks with the sand at the bottom, LED candles for the nervous. Every kind of light that says I'm small, but try me. They set them along the rail, then walk away, and for 20 minutes, the lake believes it has two skies. Tonight it is quiet. The frogs have embargoed politics. The geese are asleep. The moon has practiced its reflection to the point that it seems effortless. The bus's cabin glow folds itself into the lantern shine without elbowing. The driver watches the nearest post, the filament steady, the casing catching one bead of mist that takes a long time to fall. They nod to that bead because patience recognizes itself and nods. The doors pull in. The rubber finds home against frame. Tires roll at a sip, not a gulp. The boardwalk slides past in the windows like a page someone turns slowly because the art is good. A child in a house 2 streets away wakes, drinks water, goes back to sleep. 3 skips tonight, the lake thinks, adding a tiny mark in a tally it keeps with no pen and no paper and no urgency. Onward, with the surface smooth enough to show you that your face was peaceful long before you noticed. The town tilts toward orchards the way a shoulder tilts toward a friend. Rows take the moon like a comb, neat and regular, the grass between them trimmed by deer who believe in tidy hallways. The bus breathes into a turnout of crushed apple and dust, the kind of dust that tastes like September even when it isn't. Beyond the ditch, a windbreak line burrows its roots and lifts its branches, built not to be seen but to be felt. The way a good coat is noticed only after the cold fails to bite. Doors open. The night introduces itself as fruit and leaf in a low, constant hush of things growing, whether or not anyone watches. The orchard is old enough that trunks have personalities. Some lean like they've heard a secret. Some stand strict, like a teacher who nonetheless has pockets full of butterscotch. Under the trees, fallen apples lay out constellations of their own, bruise-starred sweet, visited by the confident feet of raccoons and the shy concern of opossums. The windbreak, spruce, cedar, a few rebellious birch, catches the northerlies and offers the apples a quieter job. In this orchard, apples are named for weather, not for families. There are first snow, white-fleshed, with skins that blush like someone complimented them and they believed it. There are south wind, green gold, tart at the teeth and lenient at the tongue. There are thunderheads, brawny and freckled, with a ripeness that arrives all at once like a door opening. There's a variety no one agrees on called break in the heat when picked before lunch and evening shower when picked after, because the same bite changes its mind the way the day does. And then there is the apple that tastes like the first day of school, not because anybody decided to market it so, but because that's what it does. Crisp hope, a little starch from a new shirt, paper smell, the awareness of clean shoes and a walk you've charted but haven't taken yet. The windbreak is a story about preparation. When the orchard was young, a storm bent trees like knees in prayer, and the next spring the farmer, not the first farmer and not the last, just the one who loved repetition enough to make it holy, planted the line. So the apples don't have to fight every battle, they said. And the trees agreed by doing their job so well that later children believed the north wind was a rumor, and south was the only direction wind knew. The break hosts birds who tiptoe the line between shy and chatty. It wears prayer flags in the form of last year's leaves. It makes a sound when the weather changes at 3 in the morning that tells farmers the exact sweater to put on. Harvest Festival happens here in whisper mode, not city noise and speakers and tents with voices bouncing. Here it is the hush of wagons on grass, the thap of fruit in baskets, the polite laughter of ladders being asked to please cooperate. Tables stand under the windbreak, sawed, sanded, given legs. On them sit pies that disappear into people at a rate that would be alarming if it weren't so accurate. A teen competition, quietly ferocious, measures who can peel an apple in the longest unbroken ribbon of skin. The winning peel often drapes itself over a wrist like a bracelet and winks in the sun. The prize is not a prize. The prize is the story of the peel and the way a grandmother claps exactly once at the end, satisfied. There is a scale on a low shelf in the packing shed, green painted and chipped. It knows the weight of work. It knows how to forgive a pound when a kid has counted their own pennies for a bag and stands big beside a parent trying to be smaller. A chalkboard hangs nearby with the day's suggestions for how to eat apples. With cheddar, always. With honey, slow. With salt, weird until not. As sauce on buttered toast. Do it. In the corner sits a crate of windfalls marked for pies and brave sauce. The brave sauce is chunky and tart and good on pancakes on the morning of a day you don't want to do and end up doing anyway. The orchard runs on unwritten favors. A neighbor brings jars. Another sharpens pruners in late winter because he cannot help making edges appealingly exact. Teenagers who once threw underripes for science now carry toddlers on their hips and show them how to twist the stem so the tree says, fine, take this one. Bees place themselves with civility. A robin uses the windbreak as a private stage for announcing small, important news. Someone with careful handwriting labels syrup bottles for a stand that is open exactly 4 Saturdays and then vanishes like a comet until it comes back again. At night like this, the orchard is the color of thinking. You can almost see the sugar moving through the branches, leaf to fruit. The way kind words move through a person, mouth to ear to heart. The windbreak steers the air in a curve that encourages dew to hang until dawn, rather than crash early and leave the fruit surprised. Bats work their map, tidy as librarians reshelving moths. A fox treads the lane and nods to the bus, as if to a colleague who also patrols at night to keep things proper. The driver leans a fraction closer to the glass, not to see better, but to be nearer to something that knows how to stand guard without raising its voice. The engine idles in a key that the windbreak carries and gives back, lowering it by a gentle fourth. The way a lullaby drops at the end, if you listen hard, you can hear a ladder breathe. You can hear a crate adjust itself to level. You can hear a memory, a girl in a red sweater holding up a halved apple to find the star, declaring she will believe in stars in 2 directions from now on. The harvest fair has contests that don't need adjudication. Who can carry the fullest basket while telling a story without stopping? Who can pick 4 apples and give them away with sentences that suit each person? Who can set a table under the windbreak with only a pocket knife and a willingness to ask for help? The prizes are, again, not prizes. They are something that goes home in your shoes and comes out as better footprints. On certain afternoons, when a weather shift makes people long for change without being sure which, the orchard crew uses the windbreak corridor as a lane for long walks. They carry mugs, then return with lesser burdens. The row of trees, ranked yet unruly, tidy yet free, models how to be rigorous and alive at the same time. You consider this through the bus window and feel some complicated knot inside you. Try less hard to be a knot. A soft thud lands not far away, an apple letting go. The sound is small and it echoes forever. The wind arrives 5 seconds later because the brake slowed it down just enough for you to hear the moment. First, then the reason. Second, it occurs to you that the town is built like this. Windbreaks around delicate things, lanes through sturdy things, occasions to taste sweetness that was paid for by patience. The doors hush toward each other until they meet and seal. The driver's hand returns to the wheel. The bus finds the lane with tenderness. Apples swing minutely in the breeze, each a lantern with its own wick. The windbreak holds until it can let go, then holds again. As the road gathers you, the orchard shrinks into lines and glow and a promise of slices later, fork clicking against plate, cinnamon hovering like a friendly ghost at shoulder height. Onward, with the shelter of trees still felt along the skin, the way warmth stays after a coat is hung. Bridges are patient by design. They learn to hold more than weight. This one holds words. Route 52 glides to the shoulder where the road narrows and the bridge appears from the trees like a barn that decided to stretch itself over water and then never came back. The roof is shingled and low. The sides are planked with the kind of wood that darkens into a color halfway between coffee and evening. The river runs through, never in a hurry, widening its shoulders to fit the bridge's mood. A yellow moon threads itself into the gaps between boards. A warmer light leaks out from within, secret as a small lamp under a blanket. The doors open with their learned kindness. Night air smells like rain 2 towns away and cedar within arm's reach. The driver rests 2 fingers on the timetable, the benediction gesture, and then lets the bus idle at a key that matches running water. Inside the bridge, drops from an earlier drizzle tap the shingles, pause on the eaves and choose their moments. Some break early, some wait. The sound is polite percussion. The town does not call this a post office. It is a truth we keep light on. But everyone knows the beams are hollowed here and there. Cubby holes in the timber where letters live until they don't. Not posted. Not sent. Not quite abandoned either. They are kept the way winter keeps seeds. Each nook wears a number burnt into the grain by a careful hand. Near the entrance, a wooden box holds plain paper and pencils. A little drawer for stubby erasers, a jar for the shavings that smell like new beginnings. A sign above, carved with a patient knife, reads, "Write what you mean." The river understands. There are gentle rules here. They are not posted, and yet everyone knows them. You do not take what is not yours to take. You do not read what is not yours to read. You do not leave a letter on a day when you're trying to make a point. You leave one when a point has softened into a shape you can set down without a thud. You may address a letter to anyone, living, gone, possible. You may write to a day you miss, or a version of yourself you almost were. You may write to sleep and ask it to find you. Sleep is a reliable correspondent. At dawn on certain days, no schedule, only sense. People gather by the downstream rail and read their own letters to the water. They do not project. The river is close. It hears quiet. The words unroll and then fold again and then float. Sometimes the paper goes home in a pocket. Sometimes it goes to the current. Either way is a kind of sending. Either way makes room in the chest. From the bank, frogs approve in their diplomatic way. You do not have to go inside to visit. Through the bus windows you can see the soft lantern, the curve of roof beams, the scuffed path where feet learn to slow. The plank floor is famous for its whisper. Wheels learn it. Boots respect it. When storms bow the trees, the bridge's whisper grows into a steady murmur that reminds the rafters how to be brave without showing off. Children who run here discover they'd rather tiptoe. The building teaches classroom voices better than any sign. 1,000 hopes live in these boards. They do not crowd. Hope knows how to stack itself gently so nothing gets creased. There is a thick envelope tucked into a low niche, years old now, sealed with a red sticker shaped like a cherry. The corner has softened where a thumb worried at it once and decided to let the letter be. It is addressed to the one I meant to be, and if you pass it by at noon, you will smell baking bread. At midnight, you will hear summer rain behind its paper. The bridge does not ask why. The bridge makes a room where whys can rest until they feel more like when. On the upstream side, a long rail carries carved dates, graduations, anniversaries, days of quiet bravery, no calendar noted. Someone carved a simple 7:52. No month, no year, just a minute on a clock. The minute a person said something hard and was met with gentleness. Beside it, in smaller letters, "Thank you for not hurrying me." The knife slowed as it cut that sentence. You can feel the respect in the wobble. There is a ritual for letters that need help finding a beginning. The ritual is to write "Dear," and then draw a small square instead of a name. The square is a little porch. Sit there for a while. The name arrives when it's ready. If it does not arrive, you may write anyway. The square can receive. Years later, people come back and add the name in, no matter how shaky the hand. The bridge keeps track without keeping score. Tonight, a moth in the lantern glass makes a soft, whole-body punctuation. The river inside the bridge is darker than the river outside. That is what roofs do to water. You can see the seam where the dark meets the pale, the way daylight stays under the bridge long after it has left the banks. 2 planks down, in perfect earshot of anyone who stands, a note is tacked with a thumbtack that has learned patience. The note says, "When you can't say it, rest here. When you can say it, leave a little empty space for the next person." The driver watches a droplet fall from the eave, another pause, another fall. There is no schedule in this building. People who can't abide that don't stop here. People who can, do. They come on walks at dusk and lean a hip against the rail and read the river's handwriting on the surface, which is always cursive and always legible if you slow down enough. The water writes, "You're doing fine." It writes, "Say less, mean more." It writes, "It was never about being perfect. It was about being honest without breaking anything." The doors draw together until they meet, closing not against the world, but with it. The bus eases forward. The bridge slides into the window's edge and then becomes only the sound of drops choosing gravity. The unsent letters remain, kept without crowding, the kind of kept that is also released. Onward, with the good weight of words that waited and the even better lightness of ones that found their way. Some shores are loud with surf and declaration. Ours hums like a workbench where small wonders are repairs. The bus drifts to a sandy pullout where grass bows to salt wind. Beyond the dune rise, the beach glows in a way that belongs to moonlight moving through cloud, silver language spoken slowly. The tide has gone out and left its curriculum. Shallow bowls in rock, clear as childhood bowls for cereal, each with a syllabus of tiny lives. In the lantern spread of that low water, sea glass winks like marbles that learned wisdom. Doors open. The air is briny and faintly sweet. Seaweed and cold stone and a memory of smoke from a long-ago driftwood fire where someone told a story, right? The lighthouse around the point does not flash tonight, it breathes. Its steady pulse is not a warning, but a companionship. I am awake so you can sleep. Waves arrive without ambition and dress the shore with threads of foam. Between those threads, colored glass, green, brown, rare blue, has been tumbled into something you could almost mistake for the idea of candy. The rule here is the rule your neighbor taught you the first time you came. 1 piece per visit. Not because the beach runs out, it never does, but because joy feeds itself better in teaspoons. People collect with that ceremony, bending, weighing, deciding, not to maximize, but to savor. A child holds up a brown oval, a bottle's former life, brought home to be a window for ants. A grandmother finds a green sliver that will become the eye of a fish glued onto a frame. A teenager pockets a blue shard, holds it to the sky, sees sky in it again, nods and says nothing. The beach keeps the rest. Inventory for some other night, when a pocket needs a small, smooth promise. In the rock bowls, worlds behave themselves with precision and generosity. Anemones, closed as fists against air, wait with monk-like confidence. Hermit crabs trial-run shells, then choose. A better fit is a kind of destiny. Snails write their cursive in the finest silt, letters that say, here, here, here. A child's hand enters the water and becomes slow, careful, kind. The tidepools teaching. The child becomes a student without being told to sit down. Above the pools, kelp beds take their naps, and farther beyond, the dark sea thinks its large thoughts without troubling the small ones. There is a sign where the beach path starts, handmade, varnish long gone. Leave the creatures their homes. Leave your hurry with the dune. People obey. They walk differently here, leaning forward, eyes soft and wide. The first step on wet rock has a posture you only learn by practice. Knee loose, foot low, mind present. Lovers hold hands to steady each other and then forget to let go, which is exactly the best reason for holding hands. At low tide in July, the town comes for a quiet festival without booths or banners. It's the night of pockets. Everyone empties theirs onto a shared table, sea glass and drift beads and shells with holes and strings that used to be ropes. Then, like birds building nests, folks swap and tie and string and make small wind charmers that sing at window corners all autumn. The rarest is the milk glass marble. The person who brings one always puts it back on the table at the end. It is, by tradition, by kindness, by shared delight, unkeepable. Down near the waterline, someone has drawn a line of circles the size of plates, a chain of moons. Children hop them, frog to frog. Adults step them, stone to stone. When the tide comes back, it erases the chain and leaves the notion behind. That is this beach's talent, to remove the picture and keep the lesson. The lighthouse has a record book in its little lobby, a binder full of entries no tourist sees, because it's tucked on a shelf that only locals know. The entries are about found things returned. A wedding ring from 2 winters ago that swore it belonged to the ocean, until the ocean decided it did not. a key to a shed, an earring, one note on lined paper that thanks the beach for accepting tears without asking for reasons. The keeper, who has learned to love low batteries and long evenings, sometimes reads the entries aloud to the light itself. The light listens like a mother on a porch who knows when to rock and when to hum. You let the tide pools gather your attention and sort it. Worry goes on a rock to dry. Hope goes in a pocket with the rule. The rest becomes the sound the rim of a bowl makes when fingered lightly. A crab lifts one leg and puts it down, practicing forever the art of being sure and small. A stray piece of red glass catches the moon and holds it like a secret you've decided to keep, because it hurts less in your hands than it would in the air. The bus's aisle glows like the shell of a mussel, pearl-edged, dim, generous. The driver watches the lighthouse's breath and matches it for 3 counts, then lets the bus breathe on its own. On the sand, a kid folds a leaf boat and sets it floating in a pool. The boat makes a ring, then a second, then stops, achieved. The kid nods, satisfied in a way that has no synonyms. The doors draw together. The seal meets, a kiss of rubber that promises rain will stay where it should. The road lifts you back above the dune. The beach becomes a faint silver belt, and then only the sound of slow water swaddling stones. The glass stays, except for the single piece someone chose with care, their pocket now heavier by just enough to remind them they were here and patient and good at small joy. Onward, with salt on the breath and one smooth color cooling in the palm of your memory. There are towers that shout across states and towers that speak to tree lines. This one does the second and is proud of it. The bus takes the slow hill where the land clears its throat into a ridge. At the top, the tower rises, red and white in daylight. Tonight, only a careful red blink at intervals, regular enough to be a metronome for a steady heart. Guy wires slope down like harp strings no one dares pluck loudly. The small cinder block hut at the base has a door that closes politely. A cable as thick as a good wrist leaves the hut and climbs into air where voices have been coaxed into waves since the town learned how. Doors sigh. Pine scent. Dirt. A sliver of ozone from electronics doing their best. This is the weather of the tower. The driver tilts a touch forward, the posture of someone who enjoys a late song. Inside the hut, behind a window that steams in winter and cools itself with a tiny fan, the night DJ leans into a mic and says names that need no last. Marta, hi. Love that you're still up. A soft click as a fader drops. Vinyl makes its own small thunder, the kind that encourages dishes in sink racks to hum along. A needle lays down like a cat. The station's call letters aren't fancy. They sound like a shrug and a smile. Folks say they stand for a whisper for sleep, even though they don't. It fits anyway. The tower's pattern is precise. Blink, dark, blink, dark. Between blinks, the pines shine a little, with the memory of red, like they held it back for themselves after lending it to air. Out beyond the ridge, the town listens. Farmhouse kitchens with mugs half drunk. Apartments with windows like aquarium panes, fish of light moving slowly from room to room. Gas station clerks in warm hoodies, nodding at callers who describe the exact color of dawn's edge. The frequency comes in perfectly only on nights that matter, the air dry enough, the wind curious enough, the moon interested. On those nights, even the toaster in the corner, plugged into who knows what, seems to tune itself. Calls come low and true. Play the one that sounds like rain but isn't, the logger says on a week of light work when the forest has asked for a pause. Can you tell her that I'm okay where I am? A voice asks, without identifying anyone, and the DJ says, consider it told. And it is. A retired teacher reads one paragraph from a book she once read aloud to a roomful of wiggly 8-year-olds. The whole town breathes with the comfort of a cadence learned early and never lost. Someone recites a recipe for beans that taste like Saturdays. Someone else lists the names of lost dogs spotted with great optimism and greater detail. At the edge of the board, a little post-it reads, "Keep room for silence." The DJ does. Between songs, between words, she lets 10 seconds walk around the small studio and find its shape. The tower loves the silence. You can feel it store those seconds like coins in a jar behind the cinder block, ready for a night when storms take the grid and the generator needs a story to remember how to start. Guy wires sing when wind thinks of them. It is a ghost note you don't hear unless you sit still. The tower leans into it, a long-necked creature communing with air. Dampness coats the grass around the hut in pearls. Boots that walk there come away with the constellations. When fog arrives, the red blink strokes the soup in gentle discipline. Here, here, here. Pilots thank it without thinking. Owls understand it without language. Teenagers lying on blankets nearby to watch the October meteors count between blinks like counting between the calls of a train and the answering echo. There is one rule for songs after midnight. Nothing that insists. Rhythm that allows walking. Melodies with places to lie down. Lyrics that keep their hands to themselves. The station's library is an odd miracle. Cassettes with handwriting and pencil. CDs with marker hearts. A shelf of vinyl and sleeves mended with tape that once held a child's art to a fridge. A sticky note on an old blues record says, "For when snow surprises April." The DJ knows where everything lives in the stacks by how much dust is not there. Sometimes, when weather makes the tower hum in G, the DJ tunes an old guitar and plays under the voice. Simple shapes. G, C, D7, thank you, good night. People feel the difference even if they don't know why. Nurses on the night shift lean against tiles and hear their own bones relax. Bakers reach for the next sack of flour with a better angle. A young father walking a colicky baby hears the guitar and thinks, "We are not alone." The pine line holds every bit of it and gives it back as scent when morning comes, resin threaded with song. You sense through glass and air the comfort economy at work. Call given, song returned. Silence offered, quiet accepted. A town that knows the names of its hills knows the frequency of its companionship. Some nights, when sleep hides, people sit in cars at the turnout and tune the dial one small notch at a time until the tower speaks as if from the next room. They do not turn the key all the way. They do not drain the battery. They let the dash light their hands and let the DJ tell them something small and true like, "If you have a blanket within reach, pull it up." You do. Even in the bus, the thought makes you warmer. The doors ease toward each other. The driver watches the blink once more to mark the interval in their mind. 10 heartbeats, then again. The bus leans like a listener who doesn't want to interrupt. As you roll away, the tower shrinks and remains, a knitting needle keeping the sky from slipping. A soft red stitch looping the night to the night to the night. Onward. With a station in your pocket, you can tune without touching a dial, the chorus of pines already singing along. Picnic rocks. Flat stones don't ask you to be a certain way. They invite you to unfold. The bus crests a low ridge and settles into the turnout with the practiced grace of someone laying a blanket. Beyond the guardrail, a spread of rocks, as broad and even as an outstretched palm, holds blankets and thermoses, and a map of the sky drawn in pencil by whoever brought the pencil and patience. The trees tuck themselves back just enough to hand the slope to stars. Above, the sky looks honest. No tricks, no flares, only what is given when air is cold and the town has turned off what it does not need. Doors open. The air steps in, sharp and friendly. It smells like wool pulled from a cedar chest and cocoa mixed in thermoses rinsed better than usual. Somewhere a zipper does that quiet song zippers do when they've decided not to jam tonight. Someone coughs softly and says sorry in the way people do when they are reverent and neighborly. A little red flashlight, astronomer's courtesy, moves like a slow firefly, illuminating mitten tips, the corner of a chart, the edge of a sleeping bag that has crept too far off the rock. There are annuals, the Perseids with their generous showmanship, the Geminids crisp as air that carries wood smoke, the surprise of a stray that nobody ordered, and that arrives as a gift you didn't know to ask for. Folks come whenever the sky suggests it, and sometimes when it doesn't, because looking up is a habit worth keeping. Children learn the constellations, the towning, the thermos to the west, the porch light over the orchard, the spare key near the bridge. Guests learn the old ones and the new ones together. Both are true, both are useful. Thermoses come with labels and tape. Mint, plain. Decaf after 9. Some hold soup that tastes like Sunday. Some hold tea that tastes like a story told again, so it will remember itself. Cookies pass without speeches. A blanket corner flips, and someone sets a rock on it in the practiced way that says they've been at windy picnics long enough to have a system. Gloves are mismatched but warm. Hats sit on heads with the stubborn dignity of knitwork done right. At the first streak, someone gasps, and someone else laughs because gasps are contagious. There is no clapping. The sky does not require applause. But there is a murmur that moves the way wind does through wheat. One wave, then two, then the field returns to its own breathing. People name what they see in whispers. There, just left of the knitted scarf. There, above the well-worn path. They draw lines with fingers, then tie those lines to wishes that are less like wishes and more like acknowledgments. I love them. Please keep them well. I would like more time with that. I did my best today, and will try again tomorrow. The rocks hear everything, and keep nothing they shouldn't. There is a tradition of naming one meteor for someone who cannot be here. It is not ownership, it is honor. You can tell who is choosing by the way they hold their jaw for a moment, intent, gentle. When the streak comes, quick and certain, they say the name, out loud or not. The name is a bridge for exactly one heartbeat. On the other side of the bridge, the person who is not here feels less far. Coffee tastes better after that meteor. Soup warms deeper. The blanket is enough. A notebook, passed from picnic to picnic since before the tower learned to play to the pines, keeps a list. Date. Weather, crisp but friendly. Breeze from orchard. Smelled like rain remembering itself. Count. Many and not many, slow show with eclairs. Notes. Tom's dad's stories about ships worth writing down. Marta's new thermos is scandalously efficient. Someone sang harmony with the wind. We don't know who. On one page, pressed and taped, a tiny fern frond that rode home in a mitten and returned itself to this place at the next gathering. Over it in pencil. Proof the earth loves the sky back. You think, looking through the glass, about how rocks become couches when people decide they should. How a cold surface gathers warmth from bodies and returns it gradually, surprising knees with friendliness. How the space between people on blankets becomes a quilt the air lays over everyone at once. There is a joke someone tells every year about satellites pretending to be meteors. It is delivered with the correct affection for actual rockets and the correct reverence for stones that burn in brief confession. It lands. It always lands. The laughter here is low and easy, the kind that dries damp wool. Now and then a streak leaves a trail long enough to be pointed at and loved together. Trails thin. You learn to be happy while seeing. You learn to be happy after not seeing. Both skills are taught well on these rocks. The driver watches with a neutrality that is not indifference, more like the professional calm of a person who tends to the structure that gets folks here and home while letting the sky do the heavy lifting. They sip whatever is in their thermos and set it down on the dash where a ring from last year already shines faintly, a full moon in miniature. A child falls asleep on a lap exactly 5 minutes sooner than anyone predicted. The lap owner covers the kid's ear with a corner of hat and keeps watching as if appointed. 2 blankets over, someone hums in a way that will not trouble the meteors, an old tune with long vowels. The stars do not mind being sung to, provided the key is kind. On this slope in this town, the etiquette of awe is easy. Share your direction. Keep your elbows to yourself. Do not insist your seeing is better than someone else's. Also, if your cookie tin is noisy, open it all at once and then set the lid under the rock so it doesn't roll. Mostly, when the sky gives, you accept, and when it withholds, you accept. And in both cases, you are fed. A streak splits. The porch light and gutters in the thermos. Someone in the back row who has said nothing all night says, "Thanks," to nobody in particular in exactly the right party. The notebook receives another line. Counted the part where we were here. The doors close with their bedtime seal. The engine deepens like a chest after a long sigh. The rocks remain cooling. The blankets roll and go home. The sky keeps doing what it does, which is to make falling look like grace. The bus takes the curve slow, internal lights dimmed, so you can keep watching through glass until the trees offer you a green roof again. Onward, with a handful of wishes that feel less like requests and more like acknowledgments of love already in motion. The bus noses along the edge of a block where trees part to reveal the quiet geometry of a school. Long brick, wide windows, a gym with a roof like a sleeping turtle. The parking lot is emptiness arranged, lines waiting for morning. Tonight a handful of lights are left on low, as if the building has dimmed itself to dream. The glow spills onto asphalt, the color of chalk dust after rain, and a swing set casts a patient shadow that sways a little, though there is no wind one could point at. The doors breathe open. Cool air rides in with a smell you would know blindfolded. Floor cleaner and crayons and paper that once was a forest and forgave you for using it. The driver rests 2 fingers on the timetable, habit turned blessing, and lets the engine idle in a key that the gym clock understands. Somewhere inside, a clock ticks with that measured thud peculiar to schools. A sound that doesn't hurry you so much as it assures you there is time. On the blacktop, yesterday's chalk holds its ground against the dew. A hopscotch grid remains, numbers softened into blurs. A circle around a circle marks the place where a class sat this afternoon, legs crisscross, learning that planets do not complain about their orbits. They just carry on. A scrawl reads, "I was fast today," which is not boastful at night, it's grateful. The tetherball ropes hang like sleepy snakes, and the ball itself rests with its seam right at the pole, neat as a part in hair before picture day. There is a custodian in this town who leaves a hallway light on for nervous walkers. He walks the halls last, keys clicking in a choir, and in the 2nd grade corridor he leaves one classroom's door cracked with a lamp lit low inside. It's not bright enough to invite mischief, but it is bright enough to tell the night that somebody is still keeping watch. He does it because once, years ago, on his own way home, he passed the child standing at the fence and knew, without being told, that the child was building the courage to pass the empty playground on foot. He turned that night with his keys still jangling and went back to make the school look like a friend. He has done it every night since, whenever the air smells like test days or goodbyes. In the library, carts nap like dogs beside stacks. A sign on one reads, "Try Again Books," and the spines there have been forgiven more times than anyone can recount. Somebody's copy of a book about a horse lives on that cart perpetually, because no one has ever finished it in the center of a day. It is a night book. It waits, spine patient, for readers who have learned that some chapters only open when the world is quiet enough to hear paper turn. On a table near the window, a jigsaw puzzle has half a sky done and one piece in the palm of a small stuffed bear who holds it like an offering. The librarian placed it there, not as a challenge, but as a reminder. Everyone holds a piece, and sometimes you hold it without knowing. The music room's door is closed, but sound collects at its base anyway. Instruments, even asleep, hum their identities. A cello leans into its stand with the pledge of a lower register. A trumpet's case rattles once inside, a valve making the tiniest attempt at practice. On the far wall, in paper snowflakes that never came down in March, a sentence still hangs. We can be quiet and still be loud. It is true at night in a way that makes the gym banners less like bragging and more like gratitude. We showed up, we kept time, we tried. The lost and found bench sits under the awning by the main doors, a congregation of jackets whose personalities did not match their owners that day. Hats attempt to look ordinary and fail. A single glove makes itself small in a sleeve. At night, the bench is not a scolding. It is a promise that tomorrow somebody will be remembered by something that missed them. There is always one water bottle that looks like it has 1,000 stories to tell, and will have to settle for being washed out and refilled and forgiven again. The scoreboard in the gym is dark, but a moth, attracted to the idea of numbers, flutters once against the glass and decides not to labor. The bleachers hold their breath. The echo that belongs to sneakers and whistles hibernates, but if you listen through the bus window, you can hear the ghost of a bounce. One more dribble before the lights went out. It lands, then lands again, then agrees to wait until morning to become motion. Outside, the swings do their gentle, unauthorized sway. You can almost hear the metal couplings dream about the right kind of squeak. A generous squeak. The kind that only toddlers laugh at because older kids have stopped hearing it. The slide is a cold moon. The monkey bars are a constellation of rungs someone will brave in 3 steps tomorrow, hands chalked with recess, fear sharpened into play, play sharpened into muscle, muscle stored as a memory for hard days 20 years from now when they will need that feeling again. A teacher's room holds a stack of papers the teacher pretended not to take home by not taking them home. A note rests on top. 3 words to a self that is both tired and noble. You did enough. Beside it, a plant bends toward the window like it trusts the night to come back with morning. A poster of the multiplication table glows as if it knows those facts are really incantations. 2 and 2 is 4. If you breathe and count, you will find anchors everywhere. By the side door, the nurse's office light is a square of honey on the linoleum. On her desk beneath that light, a basket labeled, "For Tomorrow's Bravery." Hair ties, bandage stickers with cartoon stars, 2 peppermint candies, a note in block letters, "Drink water first." The cot's blanket is folded just so, waiting for aches that sleep cannot fix alone, but can soften enough that it helps. On the wall, a thermometer drawn by a child in big marker measures not degrees, but courage. Cold feet area, warm heart line. You did it, clouds. In the far corner of the yard, there is a small garden fenced with low picket. In it, beans climb and sunflowers demonstrate devotion. A hand-painted sign reads, "Things we grew after trying." In fall, it bears marigolds so crusted with color, you think they have heartbeats. In spring, the students plant lettuce and watch it shiver into light. Tonight the soil sleeps with the gravitas of all good earth. Worms commute silently. The bus's cabin glow spreads across the dash like a desk lamp on homework. Your chest remembers childhood slowness, the particular relief of a bell that means reunion rather than dismissal. You consider how many promises have been made and kept on these squares of floor. Never loud promises, never ponies. Only show up, pay attention, say sorry and mean it. Try again with help. They fit under the low lights like they were built for this hour. The doors draw themselves closed. The bus leans forward as if someone were swinging and needed a push at exactly the right moment. The school settles one more degree into the evening, copying the sky's dimness and sending back a steady glow that says to the neighborhood, "Sleep. We'll hold your calendars until morning." The driver touches the timetable with 2 fingers. The benediction has become a language, and the road accepts you gently. Onward, with the slow, brave thud of a gym clock in your ribs and chalk dreams softening the corners of what tomorrow asks. Behind the clinic, where parking gravel gives way to time that escaped and did not apologize, a small greenhouse tucks its shoulders under the night. Its frame is old wood, sanded smooth by seasons. Its panes are many sizes and no two exactly match. You can tell which ones were salvaged from kitchen windows by the way they breathe when the air falls colder. Flecks, fog clear. It looks like a patchwork quilt made of glass, which is to say, practical magic. The bus sighs to a stop where the back alley opens. The doors part, and warm, humid air steps aboard like a neighbor with a casserole. "I thought you might want this." It carries damp soil, crushed mint, lemon peel, and the damp canvas smell of watering cans. Somewhere a heater clicks on. Small, reliable. The kind of heat that comes from a thing that knows its job and does not show off. The driver tips their cap 1 fraction, a respectful greeting to growing things. On a shelf by the greenhouse door, a row of tins stand like little moonlit soldiers, each labeled in soft pencil. Calm, courage, sleep, settle, mending, be gentle. Inside, leaves dry into an alphabet of helping. This greenhouse is not a business. It is a practice. A nurse started it on a lunch break one spring with 3 cuttings and a "we will see." The doctor said sure and then apologized to a tomato plant for brushing it on his way to the back door. Volunteers arrived as if they had been standing just to the left of the frame for years. A carpenter contributed shelves. A candy store owner brought jars. A grandmother delivered seeds in envelopes addressed like letters. To whoever needs basil this year. The clinic staff began sending folks out with paper bags. 2 sprigs of peppermint for breath, a spoonful of dried chamomile blossoms. A snippet of advice written in sideways cursive. Steep longer than you think, then add a little honey. You deserve honey. Inside the greenhouse, nights are slow and precise. Moisture ticks on the underside of panes, fattening drop by drop until gravity wins with a soft patter on the wooden sill. A string of tiny bulbs runs along a beam, casting a careful warmth, not enough to make daylight, just enough to respect leaves. Thermometers hang in 3 places and disagree by a degree or 2. The disagreement is useful, a triangulation of comfort. Plant labels jut from soil like little flags of diplomacy. Names in pencil because pencil forgives, and this is a place where forgiveness is structural. There is a sink that never got around to being replaced and has decided to become charming instead. Its trickle is a silver thread. Beside it, A stack of clean cups, mismatched, sturdy, waits for people who forgot to bring vessels for whatever cuttings the greenhouse decides they need without them having to ask. A notebook open on the potting bench records gifts out and gifts in. 4 stems rosemary to Dad with sprained ankle, for smell to cheer. 1 lemon balm to Miss E, for goodbye bedside. 2 jam jars of mints to night shift, for 3 a.m. And from the town, in return, a bag of potting soil with a heart drawn on it. A tin of butter cookies, a note that says, "Love what you're doing," in block letters made by someone who meant it and needed to simplify the saying of it. By the far wall, a propagation station. Jars with stems, learning roots, little transmissions from future to present. You can see the white beginnings, threads like silk unraveling from invisible spools, making a decision to hold on. The station is labeled Starts and also Starts Again. There's a tray of broken things that will not be fixed and are allowed to be compost instead. Next to it, a tray of broken things that might be fixed if given time. A sign over both trays reads, "Good either way." When the last patient leaves through the clinic's back door, someone in scrubs sometimes detours to the greenhouse for a handful of lemon verbena to crush and inhale until shoulders fall. They take it to the waiting room in a little bowl so people have something bright to smell between the clipboards and the coughs. In winter, there are oranges in a crate and a painted note. Take one for your pocket to remember the sun. In spring, there is dirt for children who come with scraped knees and leave with a tiny pot they will drown with love, and the plant will endure anyway and become a story about resilience the next time they visit. Neighbors trade cuttings like recipes. They stand at the door and swap. "This one roots easy," someone says, handing over a slip of pothos. "This one is fussy, but I like it. Because it looks like it knows poetry," someone else says, passing forward a string of hearts. In this place, nobody is embarrassed to prefer a plant that needs a little extra. That is, after all, the business of the building next door. On a high shelf, jars of teas bluntly labeled: Sleep, chamomile, lemon balm, oat straw. Calm, tulsi, lavender, orange peel. Courage, rosemary, peppermint, a whisper of ginger. A laminated card taped nearby reads, "Tea is not a promise. It is a handhold." It's enough. The clinic staff tuck packets into pockets with discharge summaries without making a moment of it. People find them later, at the kitchen counter, on the back of the couch, in the coat they wore on the day they were told the thing, and the smell that escapes when the packet opens says, "Type your feeling here and we'll steep it until it is smoother." The greenhouse keeps a bench under its warmest pane. It is the napping bench, not for long sleep, just 10 minutes that count more than an hour you don't have. The view is of tomatoes practicing patience and basil doing pride correctly, and a climbing bean tying knots that sailors would applaud. On the bench's underside, a child has taped a drawing of a plant with arms. The plant says in big letters, "Hi." There is a reply drawn later by a different hand, "Hi back." The conversation grows leaves every year. On some nights, a kettle lives in a corner plug, and a volunteer with a sweater that buttons high sets out cups. They write notes with a thin marker on craft paper tags. This will not fix it. This will help. They don't ask what the it is. They pour. They smile with their eyes. They encourage people to inhale the steam first, and only then taste. Sipping becomes a ritual that makes people feel like the inside of their chest has windows that can be opened a crack without letting the weather blow everything away. The bus's lights lay a little glow along the glass panes. You can see your reflection in them, soft and doubled by the night. A sprig of rosemary leans toward its candle-sized bulb. Rosemary always does know how to make itself available. The driver's hand warms the wheel. Their left shoe taps once, a slow private metronome. Where alley meets clinic wall, a small sign has been screwed to brick. Leave what you can, take what you need, label what you leave, share what you take. It is not a rule, it is an agreement. The doors hush together. The greenhouse returns to its whisper. Drip, click, leaf sigh, soil breathe. The clinic's back porch light becomes a halo the bus carries for half a block before letting it drift home. You roll on with a mintiness in your mouth you didn't know you'd borrowed, and a sense that something living will lean toward you even when you forget to face the sun. Onward, with a pocket recipe for steeping a day into something drinkable, and the knowledge that glass can be quilt, and quilt can be shelter, and shelter can be shared. Main Street has windows that do their best work after closing. Chief among them is the antique store, a long display of clocks and quilts and tin toys and letters that left their envelopes and never looked back. In daylight, the place is busy with prices and provenance. At night, its rules change to their gentlest versions. The sign in the window is hand-painted and spells out the store's stubborn philosophy in gold leaf. We buy yesterday, we lend tomorrow. In the lower corner, small brush letters, no bargaining after dark. The bus slows along the curb where reflections make a second town inside the glass. The doors open to the smell of dry wood and old varnish and the shy sweetness of cedar drawers that remember sweaters. Something like music runs through the air and then behaves itself. It is a music box, wound once at 5, still giving what it can at midnight. The driver, who has been here on other nights and has seen the owner turn tags over when the bell rings noon, rests 2 fingers on the timetable and lets the engine's hum blend with the frog-like tick of a mantel clock. Inside, nothing moves in a way you could prove, and yet nothing is quite where it was an hour ago. A stack of quilts leans 1 degree more towards someone who needs their story. A row of watches on tiny velvet pillows has conspired to show the same time. Noon in memory, midnight on the street. A shelf of blue glass glows with its own small ocean. Behind the counter, a ledger sits open to a page where the sum of numbers ends with a neat line and a flourish that suggests the writer cares how things add. About the no bargaining, it's a kindness, not a stricture. During the day, the owner enjoys the theater of it. Back and forths, like porch swings, the almosts, the okay then, the way hands look when they hold money that isn't quite the right amount and becomes the right amount by charm. But night is different. Night is for story, and stories are priceless only if they can keep being told. So at night, objects do not change hands because of price. They are lent because of fit. The tag flips over and reveals not a number, but a sentence. A pressed flower says, "For someone who waits on porches." A chipped mixing bowl says, "For a house that just learned to share." A clock with a slight hitch says, "For a person who has made peace with pauses." If you match the sentence, the shop will let the thing go with you for a time. The receipt is a small card that reads, "Bring back the story someday." No one abuses the policy. The town is not naive, it is intimate. People return things when the season that needed them folds like a blanket and goes on the shelf. They bring them back with the notes tucked inside. The bowl was here when he told me he was sorry. I would like it to witness someone else's good news. Or, the clock's hitch taught me to forgive my own. We're steady now. Or, the quilt warmed the couch after the heart appointment. I left a book in the pocket for the next time someone needs a sentence suddenly. A gray cat oversees the window nights, doing the slow blink at passers-by. The cat's collar says, "Cashier," quietly. It sleeps on a stack of folded feed sacks when the moon is full, and on the pedal of a treadle sewing machine on rain nights, as if it were a gondola on a gentle canal. In the far corner, a portrait of someone's great aunt, not the owner's, keeps her eyes to herself and is nonetheless welcoming. Beside her, a shelf labeled "Try for a While" holds peculiarities, a kaleidoscope with a dent, a radio that speaks only when thunder is mentioned, a pair of glasses that make the world look like it might have been painted yesterday. People take them home as if borrowing a book, and when the book is finished, they return it for someone who hasn't met that chapter yet. There is a case of letters, the kind that were folded with care and sealed with tape that learned to be brittle. A sign says, "Copies available, originals stay." You can take home the words that made your shoulder drop in pencil on cream paper, without taking away the object that holds everyone's gaze. On certain nights, the owner sets out a small bowl of envelopes and a placard. Write one for the future case. Folks tuck in their lines for some day, the day someone needs to read them. One is in handwriting that leans to joy. You will not always feel like this. Another, narrow and tidy, allow. Another big and loopy like a parade. Get the bigger ladle. Music boxes keep a schedule that refuses to be a schedule. One is shaped like a house and plays a song that never resolves and is somehow still satisfying because you are not in a resolving mood. You are in a being-held mood. Another, a small brass disc machine, turns with the fantastic idea that somebody in the last century designed a way for teeth to sing. A wooden metronome the size of a mitten ticks with more compassion than rigor. A bell by the door rings when a late wind decides to be a customer. The price tags at night write good sentences. On a typewriter with a faded ribbon, someone has typed them for years. Occasionally, ink runs out in the middle of a word and the owner finishes it in pencil. Two technologies holding hands. A cracked shaving mirror says, "For faces learning to like themselves at night." A pair of handleless teacups says, "For conversations that do not require handles." A picture frame without glass says, "For things that wanted breath." You watch through the bus window and feel the discipline of objects that have lived long enough to learn not to rush. A wooden spoon, worn to a smoothness that could qualify as wisdom, rests across a ceramic bowl that still smells like flour in your mind. A crate of 45s holds records with labels that read like promises and pictures that read like bravado. A lantern with no oil carries the memory of flame, which is warmer than one might expect. A child's chair sits beside an adult's chair as if counseling it. Lower your arms a little. Someone small needs you. At the back of the store, in a case where the locks are theatrical but sincere, watches line up in velvet rows. None of them show the correct time. Many of them show the correct feeling. One ticks slightly faster than another. Together they sound like rain on a roof the hour before dawn. If you could slip inside, the owner would pick one up, listen to it, then look at you and say, "This one would forgive you for sleeping in." He does this sort of thing because he knows everything in this room is a tool for comfort first, and for telling time, or straining tea, or holding flowers second. A paper by the cash register bears a tidy list of who has what lent out, names and objects and dates and tiny notes. C. Quilt with blue geese for the couch. Dog also approves. B. Green glass jar. Fireflies wanted a palace. S. Porcelain bird for a window that needed a lookout. Nobody ever loses their place. If they do, the store calls not with concern, but with hope. Ready to hear how it ends. The thing comes back. The story does too. The driver looks at the cat. The cat looks at the driver. An understanding passes. We are both guardians of thresholds.
And we do our guarding by making room, rather than by making walls. The music box, in the shape of a carousel, fumbles through its twinkles and decides to stop in kindness.
The streetlight outside leans in to help the gold leaf keep glowing. The doors come together. The bus glides and the window becomes a painting moving away. Behind, the shop does the work that tasks itself do, holds weights, leans slightly toward whoever might need to be chosen by a thing that has already been good for someone and wants another round. Onward, with the quiet dignity of lent objects and the soft resolve of a sentence on a tag that somehow found you before you were brave enough to look for it. The river makes a slow decision at the bend. It widens its shoulders and learns to pause. The ferry landing sits there, plank and rope in a little square building where tickets once had voices. Tonight the ferry is roped and resting, its deck a moonlit rectangle. A lantern at the end of the pier is turned low, a pupil dilated to kindness. Across the water, the far bank builds itself out of cottonwoods and porch lights, and the beds of people who awake once, sip from a cup, roll, and sleep again. The bus eases into the pullout where gravel has learned the exact pitch of tires that mean goodbyes versus those that mean be right back. The doors open. River air steps aboard, cool, embroidered with damp rope and wood rubbed with hands and time. A far banjo note floats in from a porch 2 bends down. It is not an invitation, not really. It is a weather report. Clear skies on the inside of the chest. The driver taps 2 fingers against the timetable, a metronome of trust, and allows the engine to settle into the lull that makes water sound more like itself. This ferry is small and stubborn. It has carried vehicles and bicycles and strollers and cakes, and a piano that needed to live because an aunt was turning 80, and hands cannot play across water without help. It has carried the doctor in a hurry with lights, and the fisherman in no hurry with a lunch that could convince time to slow. Its chain hums the right key when there is the fog. Its pilot's hut smells of thermos and pencil, and a journal that knows names without requiring them to be said. The wheel, varnished and nicked, holds the prints of 100 palms that knew how to keep a course shy of perfect and exactly right. The ferryman kept a notebook, still keeps it, though he lets others write more now that he has learned the pleasure of listening to what he already knows. Not a ledger, a record of crossings that matter. The book lives under the counter on the landing, and its pages are soft with fingers. Lines read like this: 3 umbrellas under 1 coat. Success. Tuesday fog. Mrs. Lang waved with both hands. Grandson in yellow hat waved with entire self. Proposal on mid-river. Ring did not fall. Ring will not fall. Gravity knows romance when it sees it. December. Mr. Ruiz crossed with lasagna. Reports family did not argue this year. Credited the nutmeg. July, very late. Carriage house light left on. Ferry took a cat named Biscuit who refused to be introduced to the water and therefore respected it. April. We'll try again, said twice. Second time softer. There is a page reserved always, with a heading in thick pencil. One day. On it, the town deposits small hopes, like coins in a jar, tiny gravity for big future. One day he will forgive himself. One day I will play the banjo in daylight. One day we will rest on both banks. One day I will take only what I can carry with a smile. The ferryman does not read them aloud. He greets them in silence, and sometimes, when the river wears its mirror skin, he raises the book to show the water the words. Water loves confidences. It keeps the shape of them even after the letters dry. At night, the landing becomes the slowest part of the town. The ramp waits with a patience that is a form of dignity. The posts at the edge, each with a rope tie polished by 1,000 knots, stand like good shoulders offered for balance. Stars reflect, then smear, then return to their spots, when wind licks the surface and then grows bored of mischief. The lantern at the end of the pier nods in the ease of a flame that need not prove it is a flame. The glass fogs and clears and fogs again, like breath on a window when someone is practicing an important speech that will end up being shorter than expected and better. Coins wink on the landing's wood between planks when the moon is just so. People toss them not for wishes, the river finds wishes heavy, but for gratitude, which the river floats back against the pier legs, making a sound like fingers tapping a table to the rhythm of yes. On the far shore, a porch swing squeaks once, a pivot that has seen enough afternoons to forgive midnight entirely. Herons stand knee-deep, the holy statues of patient hunters making fishermen feel seen and not judged. The ferry's mooring ropes creak in the sweet, arthritic language of work done well. The chain at the bow sighs. If you close your eyes, you can sense how a truck felt rolling on and how kids felt when allowed to stand at the rail and pretend their gum wrappers were boats, not trash, and then carefully pocketed them after pretending, because this river does not negotiate on that point. You can smell old coffee, and the ghost of donuts, and the faint cinnamon of winter scarves gone soft over seasons. There is a particular courtesy practiced here. People step back to let people step off. People do not perform generosity. They perform it so well, it stops being performance. A stranger with a plant offers to hold the dog while you tie your shoe. The dog accepts with a sigh that means, we are all ferried all the time. On fog mornings, the pilot rings a bell twice before the engine chuffs. At night, he does not ring it, choosing to keep the bell a day thing, a punctuation for when the town needs hard stops. Night is for commas. Sometimes the landing serves as a stage, not planned. 2 players, 3 at most. One leans a guitar against his ribs and plays songs that know enough not to be famous here. Another matches with a harmonica in the small corner of music that speaks river. The third stands back of the lantern and hums like a boat line. Couples dance by, not dancing, knees loose, sway like dock posts. Children find a puddle and study its politics. The ferryman writes one line in the book. Tonight the river made everyone taller by 1 inch. Nobody noticed. They used it up in Grace. The bus's lights catch the lines of the mooring posts, drawing them in ink for a moment. You imagine the handwriting in that notebook, the careful rounded letters with tails that remember a teacher who said, "Stay inside the lines," in a voice that meant, "I believe in what you're making." The driver, who may have once crossed this exact river with a box of dishes and a hope with a handle, looks at the water the way people look at friends who have kept their secrets, fondly, with a gratitude that has no place to escape and so becomes oxygen. A small sign nailed to the ticket house reads, "Fare is weather reports and news of who needs a pie." Under it, someone else has penciled, "and a song if you have one." The sign is official enough to feel binding, handmade enough to feel possible. People pay gladly, carrying their forecasts and their pies and their half-remembered hymns. The river accepts, certain that keeping this kind of currency in circulation makes both banks wealthier. The doors meet. The bus holds still one extra breath, just long enough for the river's slap under the pier to write its last sentence for now. The ferry rests, ropes easing, deck shining with the thin varnish all water grants good wood. The lantern nods once more, and the bus answers by letting its turn signal blink a rhythm that matches. The road gathers you, and the bend keeps its counsel. Onward, with a ledger of crossings in your pocket that you didn't know you carried, and a one-day hope scribbled somewhere under your ribs, where the river will find it and ferry it without hurry to a bank you can step onto without stumbling. The bus climbs a little, like a breath taken before a kind sentence. At the crown of the hill, a fence of posts and rope barely suggests a boundary. Sound is the real border here. The night carries it first, thin, bright, layered like a handful of tiny rivers poured at once. The chimes. They hang from cedar and birch and a stubby pine that decided it was a tree anyway. Bamboo knuckles, spoons that once stirred stew, shells with drilled holes that remember oceans our river has only heard rumors about, glass that talks in raindrop vowels, a ring of keys retired from doors that now stay open on purpose. Each voice is its own weather. Together they are the map of wind that the hill writes in air. The doors open. Breeze slips straight down the aisle, tastes like field and moon. A strand of little copper cups laughs softly at the back of the bus and then falls quiet, pleased to have been understood. The driver leans one elbow on the wheel and lets the engine idle so low it practically purrs in thirds beneath the higher notes. 2 fingers rest on the timetable, benediction more than habit now, and you can see in the reflection of the windshield the faint swing of an old bottle chime made from blue glass that keeps the shape of summer even in frost. No plaque explains this hill. People found it and then kept finding it. The first chime, so the town believes without insisting, was a spoon and a button strung on fishing line, tied to a low branch by hands that shook from finishing a hard chapter. The wind made sense of it. Others followed. Someone hung little pipes cut from an old lamp leg and stamped a word on each with a workbench kit. Tuesday, porch, apricot, again, home. A teacher brought students to listen to scales that knew only kindness. A nurse left 3 hollow reeds for the hour after a night shift, labeled in pencil, stay, soften, sleep. On this hill, every chime honors an ordinary day someone loved. Notes hang from strings, not always legible anymore. For the Tuesday, we fixed the leaky window and ate oranges. For the morning, the dog decided stairs were friends. For the time we didn't move, we stayed. The tags weather. The ink learns humility. The chimes keep saying what the tags began. The wind here has tempos. A breeze from the river wakes the low wood and the clay bells shaped like thumbprints. A north slip, carried past the orchard, lights the thin silver spoons. They answer with a conversation you could stir tea to. Fog, when it comes, mutes everything but the bamboo, whose soft clack sounds like 2 careful people agreeing. Storms, when the town has them, do not visit the hill rudely. The wind makes the chimes bow and then lets them sing in chorus, as if proving that being many and being gentle are not opposites. On certain blue evenings, only one chime speaks, a single shell tapping a bottle, like a pulse at a wrist. Ritual grew here the way lichen grows on a north face, quietly, thoroughly, without someone deciding. If you bring a chime, you come at dusk. You do not announce yourself. You tie your chime to a branch you didn't expect to choose. You ring it once with your fingertip. You write nothing if words feel wrong. If words feel right, you write few. Then you stand until the sound finds a home in the hill's larger sentence. You leave. The chime doesn't belong to you after that, and somehow it belongs to you more. There's a wooden rail with names knifed into it, not signatures, just first names, shallow, practiced. A kind of carving that says I had to say it somewhere. There's a tin wired to a post with a roll of cloth tape and a stub of pencil inside. People wrap the fraying cords. Pencil a small knot guide for the next person who forgets how to make a bow. Someone drew a cardinal's only symbol on the tin as a joke. The wind ignores it and lets sparrows supervise. A map board. 2 planks nailed together, more suggestion than cartography. Shows the winds the hill knows. Not north, south, east, west, but names the town uses. River from orchard. Porch smell. Laundry line. The chimes answer these like choirs placed in a cathedral. The bamboo in the river from orchard. The shells in the laundry line. The keys in porch smell where the air remembers detergent and late evening and a neighbor's laugh. Below the board in a careful hand, when in doubt, listen first. Some chimes carry seasons. One made of thin round stones strung like cookies, only sounds when the air has that spring damp that makes worms bold. Another, a circle of little glass lozenges that look like lake water, finds its note only in August when heat loosens shoulders. Winter sets the metal to bright, precise speech. Summer turns wood to alto and clay to hum. People learn to read the hill by ear, lavender weather, sweater weather, move the chair into the sun weather. The hill announces without interrupting. A blue ribbon chime flashes in the bus light. A ring of color cut from tattered rosettes saved from county fairs. It rattles in the nicest way when orchard breeze comes up the slope, as if ringing out joy. Beside it, a chime of pencils hangs from a ruler ruined and redeemed. Each pencil stub is sharpened to a tiny soft point. When wind taps graphite, it writes on nothing and somehow leaves a mark anyway. A folded note tied nearby, almost washed blank, says, for the day he read one page aloud without stopping. A shell string carries a tiny round tag, mending. Beneath the tree, where the hill's grass thins to soil, someone has laid 3 stones in a triad. Start, middle, breathing room. It is not a shrine. It is a suggestion. Teenagers sit there proper as parishioners, and then sprawl as teenagers, letting the sound move into their heads where noise used to win. Babies fall asleep here in strollers the second their wheels stop. A grandmother brings a thermos and pours tea enough for the wind to have a taste by smell. You can't hear all the hill at once, that's part of the lesson. Your ears pick a layer and settle there. Glass notes like dew. Bamboo like careful applause. Keys like memory letting itself back in after a long day. The bus's idle becomes the bed under it all, the way a heart is the bed under breath, under thought, under sound. The driver touches the bell cord just enough to make the faintest click. A spoon answers. The hill approves. Call in response, but soft. The kind that doesn't wake a child whose head just tipped to the side into dreaming. Back along the rope, a modest mason jar holds folded papers. A pencil line on the glasses. If you can't bring a chime, leave a day. People write, today the bread rose. Today I said sorry first. Today I let myself stop. Today we laughed and it felt easy. Today the cat jumped to the top shelf again and I pretended to be upset and wasn't. The jar fills. Someone takes the thickest handfuls, reads them under breath to the wind, never out loud to other people, and then tucks them into the hollow of a fallen limb where paper returns to pulp, returns to soil, returns to sound. The doors ease shut. A light chime flirts with the gasket and then remembers itself. The bus leans forward and the hill keeps singing, losing nothing by distance because the ear the hill means to reach is the one you carry with you. One more bright tangle of notes clears the mirrors as you roll. A last bamboo clack taps the sentence closed. The wind keeps writing. You keep listening even when glass and trees turn to silhouettes. Onward with music caught in your sleeves, ordinary day hymns clinking softly with the rhythm of the road. The rec hall wears its rest like a badge earned. Outside, a single light above the side door draws a neat, honey-colored rectangle on concrete. Inside, the biggest room in town stands calmly full of absence. chairs stacked in 4 towers making little skylines, folded tables leaning, a scoreboard dark, a banner still pinned above the stage that reads, not in triumph but in affection, "Good job, everyone." The floor's wood, laid in squares that remember Friday nights and Tuesday craft fairs, and shelter from storm afternoons when the world asked for community, and the hall handed it over without a receipt. The bus drifts to the curb by the hedge of scrub lilac. You can smell last spring, still caught in the woody stems. The doors open, and the rec hall's climate, faint gem varnish, paper, citrus cleaner, sugar that escaped a bake sale, steps aboard with the murmuring grace of a crowd distilled into a single scent. The vending machine inside hums like a distant rehearsal. Somewhere a soda can settles in a crate and clinks once. Out in the foyer, the community bulletin board tries on the night like a cardigan. The hall has a cookie tin. Of course it does. Round, blue, dented with honest use. It rides the top of the old fridge in the kitchenette like a little moon. Inside, a handful of cookies that never quite go stale because the town refuses to let them. Beside it, a jar labeled tea. Black bags, a few chamomile, 1 peppermint crushed by accident, and thus more generous with its smell. A note tapped to the cabinet with bright tape reads, "Dishes like hot water, so do we." The kettle knows when to sing without startling. Down the hallway, the craft closet sleeps with its mouth open a little. Jars of buttons ranging from serious to circus, a box of yarn with a grandmother's whisper in it, a tray of tempera paints whose lids have learned to accept reminders. A sign-out sheet for the sewing machines has names in 3 generations' hands. On the counter, a basket labeled Lonely Tupperware, full of containers whose owners reunited with them at last month's potluck, and then forgot them again at this month's. The basket does not judge. It has a reunion schedule memorized and enjoys its work. A whiteboard by the door lists this week's events in a hand that writes as if wearing a smile. Monday, line dancing. Beginners welcome, all feet welcome. Tuesday, chair yoga. Wednesday, town meeting. Pie afterward, even if we disagree first. Thursday, jazz for people who don't think they like jazz. Friday, movie. The one with the dog, bring tissues. Saturday, fix-it clinic. Sunday, naps. Room open 2-4 for reading. Below that, a strip of paper with tear-off numbers advertises guitar lessons for the left-handed, which everyone knows are the same as for the right-handed, but taught by someone willing to sit on the other side. On a table near the stage, a glass jar labeled Winds holds slips of paper. The hall started it by accident, leaving a few pens and blank squares near a sign from an old fundraiser. People began writing things down because they were waiting and the jar was there. near the stage, a glass jar labeled Wins. A table near the stage, a glass jar labeled Wins holds slips of paper. The hall started it by accident, leaving a few pens and blank squares near a sign from an old fundraiser. People began writing things down because they were waiting, and the jar was there. Now it's a tradition. Tonight's top slips read, I loosened the jar without banging it on the counter. I asked for help and got it. I remembered her name in the produce aisle. I fixed the squeak. I slept 8 hours. I wore the shirt I saved. I went outside even though it rained. I did not check my phone for a whole hour. The jar never empties exactly. It composts. Old slips move to a shoebox under the stage labeled Compost Archive. Years gather and make a rich soil no one sees and everyone feels. The trophy case along the north wall glints faintly in the night light. Trophies here are less about dominance than about repetition. Softball league, showing up. 4-H watered the beans even on hot days. Spelling bee remembered the silent letters, stayed sweet about it. The biggest trophy is a soup pot awarded annually at the Harvest Cook-Off. It's nicked and perfect, and the first instruction on the engraved plaque is, share your recipe with someone who looks like they want to ask but is shy. The rec hall records things. There is a ledger for keys. Who took them, who brought them back on time, who lost one once and found it 3 days later and confessed and was forgiven. There is a calendar that still has last month's blood drive circled and a penciled-in note. Bring cookies for after. There is a slim notebook in a drawer under the old ribbon-cutting scissors. Its cover stamped quietly with the words, room temperature. Inside, entries measure the thermostat's gentle compromises during long meetings, funerals, parties, snow days, and the night the power went out, and the hall became a lit island of people talking about nothing and everything while the generator hummed like a dog. If you listen, you can hear applause. Not loud, a memory. Chairs squeaked back, arms went up, hands met hands, cheeks lifted. One clap lingers in the rafters, a single round sound like a pearl you can't see. A single scuff on the floor near center court keeps the rhythm for anyone who needs it. Someone wrote in tiny script along the baseboard, where the paint meets the wax, you did enough for today. The words walk the room with the moon, comforting each corner in turn. There's a cart in the storage room, on wheels that complain lovingly, piled with the karaoke machine and 2 mic stands, and a binder labeled Songs Mostly Everyone Knows. In its back pocket, a smaller binder labeled For After 9 p.m. The second one holds the ballads people sing when they've cleaned up chairs together, and courage grows in the space hospitality leaves. The mics don't like to be loud, they like to be true. The hall obliges by turning off one bank of lights and letting the string over the stage handle it. A disco ball, once donated by a roller rink that closed, hangs, not centered intentionally, so it throws fewer stars than it could, and each one matters more. In one corner, a coat tree with a bowed back hosts a lost scarf every winter that no one claims. The scarf becomes the hall scarf. It attends cold events. It's draped on the chivalry. It smells faintly of nutmeg and clean wool, and belongs to whoever needs it 5 minutes at a time. By spring, it has grown 2 inches in length from being hung damp. In summer, it rests over the back of a chair near a fan and learns to be a breeze. The bus's light reveals for a second the handprints kids pressed along the bottom of the east wall during a painting day 6 summers ago. Names drift under the hands, some now written in taller handwriting in the sign-out book. Borrowed table, returned chairs, set-up chairs, swept. A sense lives here that everything you put away also puts you away. Tucks you in under order, hum, click, off. It is a room that loves lowering its own volume. The driver watches the way the hall holds quiet, the way the quiet holds people, the way people hold each other, even when they don't agree, especially when they don't agree. They touch the timetable. The kettle in the kitchenette clicks itself colder in polite stages. The vending machine hum rounds down and then up again, as though reminding itself not to nap on duty. The doors close. The bus eases from the curb, and as it moves, the banner over the stage, "Good job, everyone," tilts in the window frame and then slides away like the last line of a letter. Out here, the hedge breathes lilac once for luck. Inside, a single exit sign keeps being small and heroic. Tomorrow the hall will clang and sing and scuff and feed. Tonight it rests like a hand you trust on your back, saying, "In heat and weight, you can lean. Onward with the jar of wins in your pocket. Slips you didn't write and yet somehow did." It rises from the edge of a grassy lot like a moon on stilts, riveted, steel legs splayed, round tank dimpled, ladder caged and off limits, crown ringed with a catwalk where swifts scribble their dusk cursive each summer. In daylight, it is infrastructure. At night, under the town's modest floodlight and the larger, better light of the moon, it is a promise board. Chalk names gathered shoulder to shoulder, some new and bright, some ghosting through last week's rain, all part of a ritual Gravity Falls invented merely by doing it twice and choosing to keep going. The bus settles at the curb. The doors hush open. Chalk dust you can't see asks to be believed, and you do. The driver rests 2 fingers on the timetable. The engine hum meets the low steel thrum inside the tank. A sound water makes when it has decided to stay put and be useful in the morning. In the shadow of the closest leg, a biscuit tin sits on a cinder block. It is heavy with sticks of chalk and colors that have found their softer versions. Blue that learned to be sky, pink that learned restraint, yellow that learned to be yoke and not shout about the sun. The ritual is simple and particular. When you are about to do something brave, you come here and write your first name. Just the name. Just enough to be counted by yourself. You write at shoulder height, so when you return, you will see if your shoulders have changed. If you are small, you write lower, and someone taller writes low with you, so you do not feel alone on your line. If you are tall, you stoop a little to keep the names herd-like, companionable. Some add a dot after, others don't. The dot means, watch this. The absence means, I am watching too. Then you go do the thing. Call, quit, begin, walk in, walk away, stay. Say I'm sorry. Say I forgive you. Say I can't, but I wish I could. Ask for the test. Apply, decline, eat, sleep, tell, try, fold, unfold. The tower doesn't care what it is, only that it is honest. The town doesn't need details. It needs a place to put courage where it can find itself again later. When you've done it, when the day has rounded its corner and you stand on whatever other side exists, you come back and write your name again. Over the first, if the chalk remains. Beside it, if rain borrowed it for a while. Some add the date. Some add a line under, not to separate, but to support. Some add a tiny heart so faint you wouldn't see it unless you leaned and squinted, and were meant to see it because you came with them or you were them. The second writing isn't louder, it's steadier. It carries the weight of sweat dried and hands washed, and a glass of water on a counter near a sink where someone said, "You did it," and meant the it without making it their own. Rain loves the tower. It arrives dramatically sometimes, drums the roof, sheets the legs, drags chalk down in iridescent ghosts. No one minds. Names blur into river writing. Courage becomes paint. Later, hours or days, the sun leans in, the tank warms, and the wall dries enough to receive again. A few names survive on the leeward side, under the lip, where weather remembered mercy. They fade to whispers, and then to knowledge, and then to nothing. The eye can see, but something the hand can feel when it brushes steel, like static, like gratitude. Children come here and ask what it is. Parents explain with a shrug toward the tin. It's where you write your name when you're about to do a brave thing, and again after. The kids nod like people who already knew that bravery is just a kind of showing up with your name attached. One writes ANA in pink lower on the wall, tongue caught between teeth, then tells the tower, I'm going to ride without training wheels. Later, days, seasons, she returns and writes ANA again over the ghost of ANA. This time in blue, this time with dirt on her knees and a grin shaped like velocity. By the tin, a folded paper lives under a rock. It reads, How to write when hands shiver. 1. Put the chalk on its side. 2. Make a shape first. Not letter, just shape. 3. Breathe. 4. Letters later. Below that, sign for someone who can't come. Space after that carries names written by other hands that found a way to be faithful without pretending to be anyone else. The tower accepts proxy courage gladly. Water has always believed in carrying. A long time ago, a woman wrote her name before calling a brother she'd not spoken to since both their parents' house still held their arguments in the walls. She returned that night and wrote it again, the second time slowly, as if the chalk were a straw she drank steadiness through. Years later, she brought her son and stood at the wall while he wrote his, left-handed and thoughtful, before walking into the rec hall to stand up and say out loud, for practice, what he would later say somewhere harder. The tower keeps their handwriting seasons apart and right beside each other. Teenagers leave their marks with jokes built in, stacking names up the leg like a ladder, then laughing and coming back with a step stool to make a base layer of little names so the tower looks properly supported. Older hands write small and neat at knee height to avoid the crowd at eye level. Someone wrote kittens in blue, then returned later and wrote kittens again with 3 paw prints. The town did not inquire. The town prefers outcomes to explanations when outcomes purr. On the tank here and there, chalk pictures bloom and fade. A narrow boat with a square sail that returns after every rain. A star with a tail that points toward the hill so the meteors don't forget where to please be seen. A ladder drawn up the side of the leg that stops far short of the cage, an honest admission. Someone chalked a little faucet with a single blue drop under it next to the spigot. Under that, small letters. Drink first. On one post, where the paint bubbles, a speech bubble in white. Okay, but you are enough even if you don't. A light along the ground throws the names into the shadow just enough that they feel like they're rising off the metal. The bus's interior glow folds into that and backs away, not wanting to steal the spotlight. The driver watches a moth do a slow loop and park on a rivet. Tiny ballerina on a steel stage. The tank hums, deep and certain. Water settles. Somewhere inside, a small lapping sound measures time without count. In the tin, one stub of chalk, burnt down almost to fingernail, waits, saved by a note that says, For the day, someone only needs this much. It will happen. It has happened. The town believes in long sentences, but it respects the power of a single word written once, twice. The doors close. Rubber meets frame with a kiss. As the bus eases forward, the tower slides across the window and becomes a round, slow-moving planet of names. You can't read them now, not really, and you don't have to. You know what they say? The thing bravery always says, with the simplest grammar, a first person, a verb again. Onward, with a little chalk dust on your tongue, and the clean taste of water keeping the town awake until the morning taps it for use. The road loosens and settles back into a familiarity your bones recognize. Pines gather again close enough that their tops knit a dark shawl. The depot's bulb appears before the building does, a small, round star hung at human height. Then wood, then window, then bench, then the timetable, with its soft, chipped letters and the moths on duty. Route 52 exhales into its home space, tires landing in grooves they helped make, the way a well-loved book opens to the page you are going to read again anyway. The bus idles. The engine chooses the note it always chooses here, low, kind, non-committal about goodbye. The doors sigh, and the depot's breath, paper, dust, the ghost of cinnamon from a long-ago thermos steps aboard like a neighbor with a story they'll wait to tell until you put your bag down. The bench creaks in its remembered place. The clock ticks its measured yes. Somewhere a small metal sign lightly taps its nail when the door swings and returns and rests. Last stop, the driver says in a voice that has lived on this street long enough to be believed without proof. The two-finger benediction touches the timetable one more time. The motion is less habit than promise now. We did the loop. We kept the quiet. We saw what keeps the town gentle at night. We'll do it again. No urgency, no roll call. Only the soft accounting night prefers. Everyone who needed a ride had one. On the depot board, a new flyer leans at a hopeful angle. A bake sale announced in a hand that loops its G's with optimism. A photograph of a dog under the word found sits beside a photograph of the same dog under the word home. The dates making a story that fits in the corner and fills a block. The recipe for night cocoa still peeks out from behind a longer notice about potholes on Pine. Someone has pinned a paper leaf cut from a grocery bag, vein lines inked in a careful child hand. On it, in big letters, "Thank you for the bus," no signature. The bus blushes in motor. You could get off, you could walk the few steps to the bench, sit, look at the boards and the moths and the white-painted trim that remembers a cheerful green. You could watch the bulb hum. You could pat the ticket punch on the counter. No, you wouldn't. But you could, and the depot would understand. Or you could stay right where you are and let the getting off happen inside your chest. It already has, in truth. You've set down things at the mill and the diner and the underpass. You've climbed without climbing to the lookout platform. You've let the bend hold a curve for you. You've skipped a worry 3 times at the boardwalk and watched it float. You've walked under apples. You've written letters you didn't have to mail. You found glass and left most. You've tuned a tower and counted streaks and remembered school and inhaled mint, and borrowed a sentence from a tag and paid a fare in weather reports, and listened to chimes and filled a jar with winds you didn't know were yours. You've written your name twice on steel. You are here. The driver stands, not to make an announcement, but to stretch the kind of stretch that says work done well, work that will be done again. Work that feels like a quilt at the knees. They turn one switch, then a second. The cabin light takes a long blink before consenting to dim, as if checking one more time that no book remains face down, no thermos uncapped, no scarf curled snake-like on the seat. The bell cord loses its glow. The aisle settles into the kind of dark that respects eyelids even when they close behind glass. Outside, the pines do their night work, counting breaths, proving silence, being taller than necessary and humbly so. A twig lets go somewhere. The moths keep their posts and look like paper stars that got lost and decided this was fine. Far away, the radio tower blinks its soft red at intervals your body has memorized without permission. Closer, the depot clock ticks again. You notice you exhale each time without trying. This is what porches are for. This is what benches are for. This is what buses can be for, when a town designs them with care and trust. The voice in your head that keeps lists and narrates calendars yawns and goes very quiet. It remembers the school hallway light left on low for nervous walkers and imitates it. Stays on, but barely, so you can find your way to sleep without bumping your thoughts. The part of you that checks the door twice feels the ferry rope around a cleat and nods and lets the hand drop from the knob. The part that thinks you have to earn rest with perfect days remembers the antique store's sentence on a tag and decides to borrow it for a while. For a person who has made peace with pauses, you have, or you are. Either is enough at midnight, either is enough at 3 a.m. when you wake to drink the water by the bed and decide, after one slow, grateful swallow, that yes, this is still a beautiful life. The driver steps down and stands for a moment under the depot light. They look at the bus the way a teacher looks at a room after the last student leaves, fondness, inventory. We'll get that squeak tomorrow. Gratitude. A pause that adds one beat to a day that was rushing earlier for someone else. Then they step back in, pull the cord once, just a click, quiet enough to be a secret handshake, and sit. The engine hum drops again, one last settle, like a cat resculpting itself to suit a lap. The doors inhale and close with that hush they learned on purpose, the hush that turns outside into lullaby and inside into pillow. If you want to ride again, you can, right now, in your head or later, with shoes on and a coin in your pocket. Routes here run on need more than on the clock. Route 52 exists to circle what the town loves until what the town loves is easy to remember in the dark. You have it, you can keep it. The mill will stay mossy. The diner will leave the pie. The mural will breathe between solstices. The lookout will pin the constellations to low branches when you're tired. The rail bend will hum. The boardwalk will glow even when switched off. The orchard will shoulder the wind. The bridge will hold the words. The beach will shine glass and teach patience that fits a palm. The tower will speak to pines and people. The picnic rocks will wait for blankets. The school will leave a hallway lamp on. The greenhouse will steep courage. The antique store will lend tomorrows. The ferry will write crossings in a hand that knows how to spell mercy. The chimes will count your ordinary days like pearls. The rec hall will keep your small victories in a jar. The water tower will be ready with chalk. The depot bulb hums. It doesn't promise anything it can't keep. It just keeps being light in a place you can find without looking hard. Thank you for riding, the driver says, as if you'd done them a favor by letting the town do what it does best. The sentence lands and spreads out like a warm patch on a quilt that someone ironed for the pleasure of smoothing. Then Oak, sleep well. You do. Or you start to. Or you stay still long enough that sleep recognizes you and takes your hand. The bus purr fades to pine wind hush. The moths tap and rest, tap and rest. The depot keeps its porch light. The clock counts in the only direction that matters at this hour, forward but forgiving. Night finishes its sentence. It was kind.